frankly dead on, and I hope I can do justice to your position as well. So, okay, so I'm going to summarize Sam's argument briefly, and then I'm going to tell him, let you guys know why he thinks what things I'm not taking into account. So, Sam believes that there are two fundamental dangers to psychological and social stability. Religious fundamentalism, essentially on the right, and moral relativism and nihilism on the left. And so the danger of the right-wing position is that it enables people to arbitrarily establish certain revealed axioms as indisputable truth, and then to tyrannize themselves and other people with the claims that those are divine revelations. And he sees that as part of the danger of religious fundamentalism, and maybe religious thinking in general, but also as something that characterizes secular totalitarianism.
Will not allow me to view this. It's a fucking soundtrack. Okay, there we go. It's a fucking soundtrack. Beep 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 beep. Yeah, just came from East Theo stream. I don't like that guy. All right. A couple of things here. Ease into it gently. All right, so we'll start off. I got I got this wrong. Or is it? Oh, it's in this one. Okay, we'll just go back to the timestamp. Do housekeeping on that.
Back down the line.
So I made a big boo-boo here, right? And so, like, unlike my theist counterparts, I'm actually going to go back and, like, immediately fucking address this shit, right? Because it only makes sense to do so. Okay, so right about here, we'll do this, and I'll talk about how stupid what I said was, and then I'm going to make this argument, like, repeatedly. I mean, compared to the other guy, I mean, it's not that bad, but whatever, you know, I mean, just, so, the way that I phrase this, right, it's just, it's not good. And then the technical terminology is bad.
Over there, where they're going to say, no, I see a green apple.
This part's all right. It's coming up in like 2 minutes, I think. So I'll fast forward a little bit.
In pear in that book.
The apple and pear thing, that works fine.
The output, yeah, that's a problem. No, I don't want problem. That means evaluations can't be true or false. That's breaking that argument. Yeah, you just said the output is content. Dude, you said the output isn't the thing that's true or false, it's the content. Yeah. I said, how does the machine evaluate the content? That's more output. Yeah, the output.
Yeah. Good night, Cher. Good to see you. Thanks. My mind is in the gutter. Jim Bob's mind is so far up his ass, it's being digested. I'd say I agree with that. That is an accurate evaluation of this content.
To be true or false, it's the content. How do you evaluate the content? The output. Premise one. Outputs aren't true or false. It's the content that's true or false. How do you evaluate whether the content's true or false? The output. You haven't shown something. You haven't shown a problem. It's because the problem is you have no access to whether it's true or false because you keep going back in time. Evaluate it. Yeah,
it's only because you individually are never going to be the arbiter of truth.
Well, the content is there now a new reference.
So, okay, yeah, it's coming up here. I'm going to say something about perspective. That's
what's the thing
it's terribly flawed.
It's wild. That he doesn't see that that's a contradiction. Okay, outputs aren't true or false. Outputs evaluate content. And it's the content that's either true or false. Yeah, it's the content that's true or false. How do you evaluate the content? An output. He doesn't understand. This is either pure sophistry or he's actually dumb. Well, no, you have to evaluate the content. Content doesn't determine it's true or false. It doesn't matter what's evaluating it now. That's the end of your argument. The fact that has to be evaluated. Do you need to hear the contradiction now? You haven't given the contradiction. I did.
It's not contradictory. Both claims can be simultaneously true, right? To the observer. There's always going to be one objective truth. But neither observer can stake claim on that objective truth. because both are constrained by whatever mental or physical limitations, right, are imposed upon them.
So that's true, right? You're constrained by certain parameters, right?
Right? So we're both looking at the same object, but I'm looking at it from the vantage of...
So this is like this is where it just goes off the rails, and it's just, you know, big dumb head big dumb head mistake, you know, poopy pants.
You know, with the sun at my back, and you're looking at it with the sun facing you, right? And let's say, to me, this...
So objectively, right, if you're in the occupying like the same space, like physical space at the same time, right, like, and I'm standing with the sun on my back and I'm like casting a shadow upon an object, obviously, like the person standing to my left or whatever, or opposing me, right, they're also going to be subject to the fact that I am there blocking the rays of sunlight onto this object, right? So this was, I mean, so it could be that that like in the fraction of a second, right, like between my shadow being like fully like fully obstructing the light onto this object that's casting the sun behind me, that there might be a moment where, you know, from my perspective, the shadow has fully shaded the area, right, and to the other observer it hasn't, right, depending on like a lot of different things, but generally speaking, like light travels, you know, extremely fast and stuff like that. So yeah, for the most part, like the shadow thing is bad. Like you could still have an instance where, from, you know, a different perspective, the light source will still like illuminate an object differently, which is the whole point. But, you know, I just like I went off the rails on this one. You know, what are you going to do after like 5 hours of listening, or, you know, 3.5 hours at this point of listening to these motherfuckers, you know? But I do get back on track on some shit, so, you know, I'm not going to be too hard on myself. But I made this argument like at least twice in the latter portion of this video, and when I heard myself saying it, like reflecting on it, I was like, oh, that's stupid. That's just really dumb, right? So that's my style, is to like come out and be like, oh yeah, I said some dumb shit yesterday, so here I am, like, you know, don't repeat that argument, because obviously it's not good for anybody who didn't pick up on that. So
object is going to be shaded, right? It's probably gonna, like, let's say like the, you know, the sun is behind me and I'm looking directly behind me, I'm looking directly at this object, that object will be in the shade. And you standing at another vantage point, right, would not be standing in my shadow necessarily. Object might be, you know, like sunlight or something.
That's actually, I pulled that quotation from a song, and it's more humorous in my mind than it is like listening back to it.
Like it might be fully
I can still chuckle about it, but nobody else understands what the fuck I'm talking about.
And we could both be seeing the same phenomena at the same time, and both of our perspectives are true, and yet they are contradictory to one another. All right, we'll take another.
So that's all I really wanted to address there. Trusty Ape, hashtag Trusty Ape Co, at Trusty Ape Co, and email stupidmonkeyphilosophy@gmail.com. I'm afraid there's a fly in the ointment. I don't know if I hopefully saved this. I don't think I did save it to the watch later. I'll have to go search it up. Probably. Oh, no, I did. Okay. So, well, we're going to finish the latter portion of the Sam Harris video, which is like pleasantries now, and they're going to talk about unrelated shit, and then go back and review the Israel portion earlier on, and we'll check out some breaking news. Thanks, Shu. Sure says love the unicorn. Accountability makes us gross people. That's true, yes. It's like beyond this conversation, Sam's done like several videos on this topic recently. So.
Stabilizing an experience you regret having had on MD.
Good to see you, Sheriff. Yeah, I'll have to try to call you, like, later on or something, because I just really haven't. Well, today was just a shit show, so obviously.
MDMA is very, very low. I mean, there's some contraindications with it as a drug. I mean, it's not as physiologically, it's not as benign as LSD or psilocybin. I mean, LSD and psilocybin, while they run a much greater risk of producing a scary experience, just physically, pharmacologically, they are truly benign drugs. MDMA is, in most cases, is I think safe to take, a certain number of times, but there's definitely some story of its neurotoxicity, which I think I can't totally dismiss, and there's also some question as to if you're buying it on the street, are you really getting what you think you're getting, and all of that. But have you ever taken MDMA?
Might be a fly in the ointment. There might be some speed in your MDMA.
Okay.
I did one time, and I had a very pleasant experience with it. But I was also a little scary for. It was the only time I'd ever experienced a drug, marijuana, alcohol, where I realized if something comes my way right now that I have to deal with, I will not be able to overcome it. And that I felt very vulnerable in that way, and I haven't taken it since.
So a lot of people think that that they're never going to come out of a bad drug experience, especially any drug experience. If you're in it, if you like it, right, you want it to stay that way forever. But anytime you have a bad drug experience, your first thought is oh shit, I'm never gonna be normal again, right? That's indicative of the experience.
But
right.
it was awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, again, there's some question as to whether or not what you got is MDMA or pure MDMA, and right. So the sourcing is an issue, but if you could overcome that hurdle, in the right context, I think it's there's a lot of spiritual, ethical growth that is possible on the basis of that experience, because it's just it's not necessarily representative of everything you want out of your conscious life, but it's from a kind of a meditative point of view, it is kind of like rocket fuel. I mean, really, if you have framed by the right thoughts and the right intentions, putting your if someone were going to contemplate how much they love other people, how grateful.
So ecstasy scares the fuck out of me, particularly, right? Because I've never taken it, right? But I knew a kid when I was before I came of age. I was high school age. I wasn't in high school. I dropped out by that point, but I was using pretty heavily. But I knew a kid who did too much E, and he blew a fucking hole in his brain. Not literally, but with the after I don't know, maybe 2 months of knowing him, he went from being a normal guy to where he couldn't, he was nearly vegetative, because he had done so much ecstasy. He could, he'd walk into the room and he'd kind of acknowledge you were there, but he was semi-fucking retarded from it.
They are to just be alive and to have a family, and to, I mean, just you point your thoughts in that direction. On MDMA, what you get is a 20 megaton burst of love and gratitude that is well worth having. It's well worth experiencing, right? And it does leave a residue, and it's a residue you can then work with, right? There's something to do on that basis. You can definitely have the same kinds of experience with LSD and psilocybin, but they are so distorting of perception and ideation in so many other ways, for good or for ill, that one's trajectory is far less predictable, right? If I mean, in some ways they're more powerful than MDMA. I mean, there's much more of a kind of a self-transcending possibility with them, but there's also just it's more of a spin of the roulette wheel where you just can't fully control the experience you're going to have. So I'm never eager to push someone to take any drug.
You made it sound really good, Sam.
Yeah, I know. But there are caveats. But with MDMA, I do feel like for most people, most of the time, certainly, let's say have some kind of contraindication, like I don't know what it would be, probably high blood pressure or something, cardiac. I just think it can be a truly rewarding experience for most people.
Before you go, I did one other question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I've been asking for years. Abortion. Now, I heard today something you said about abortion, which very much, as usual, to be honest, conforms to my way of thinking, which was that the court could have constructed, if they were honest, some opinion which said that in a certain early period of time, any objection to this is religious, and we have a rule against religious laws. I don't know what that early period of time is, but I think empirically, at some early period of weeks, it's clear that only religious people have a problem with it, and therefore I'd be comfortable. But that wasn't really the argument that was made. But science, in some ways, has always been the enemy of Roe versus Wade. Trimesters are some sort of approximation for something we believe is going on. But at some point, there will be some physiological testable event that we can say.
It's called trimesters, like a approximate. Well, yeah, it's kind of approximation. Like we can pretty accurately measure like fetal gestation, right? Like there are, yeah, there's a numbers of ways that you can test for that. Like you like measure the development of an embryo into a fetus and all that good shit. So I don't really understand what this guy's saying here. But
this happens, we're going to protect this as a human life, and before it happens, we're not. And of course, pills will always be like, they're like the pharmaceutical clothes hanger abortions, right? They'll always be able to. But in terms of a matter of law, as a neuroscientist, where would be the scientific, if you had perfect knowledge of what's going on inside a fetus, a brain or whatever, where would you draw a line to protect the fetus as a life?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I didn't know he was going to go into abortion. Is that even listed here? Whatever. It's fine.
Well, it's a hard question, and it's not a question we necessarily will ever be able to answer in practice, right? I mean, in principle, maybe we can answer it, but it's it may always seem arbitrary where we draw the line. In the same way that it seems arbitrary where we draw the line for other things. Like, I mean, the fact, why do we let kids have driver's licenses at 16, right? Like, it's an arbitrary cutoff. We're judging most 15-year-olds.
I'll give you a better one. We let babies, we have baby diaper commercials with naked babies running around. And at some point, wait a second, that's pornography.
Right.
And so, but you have to, and both sides are correct. They're not the same thing. So you draw a line.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead, sorry.
So it might always seem arbitrary. It might always be arbitrary. But that the arbitrary line it will hopefully map to something more or less intelligible. I mean, so I think any understanding of human development, in utero, that suggested that there was some point of demarcation where a fetus could experience pain, right, and the conscious experience of pain. Well, then that would be a moment where we would have an ethical obligation.
I'm struggling with this one right now. I'm just going to go.
To prevent the experience of being painfully murdered, right? I mean, like that would be bad if we knew we were killing a fetus in a some way that just amounted to being you're essentially drawing and quartering an infant, right? I mean, it's just ghastly, right?
And the notion of anesthetizing a fetus to kill it is gruesome, right?
Yes. All of that, it's understandable that all of that would make us uncomfortable and probably should make us uncomfortable. But once we push further back, on the timeline, and we get to an organism that is not even discernibly human, apart from looking at its chromosomes, right? I mean, like there was this one gag that some pro-choice person played on a talk show. I think I remember. I might have this somewhat.
See, I don't like the argument when he said that the moment it begins to experience pain, right? Like, we're to find out that you could, experience pain as a developing human, right? The moment that, like, say, like, what the nervous system, like the second the nervous system is intact, but like when does the nervous system become fully intact, right? I don't know. You'd have to be very, very precise about that, and so yeah, I'm hesitant to really pull a position on that, but that's not really what I'm trying to argue against this morning anyway. It's been an interesting morning already.
Garbled, but I think they were on a talk show with a pro-life person, and they held up a picture of a fetus, at whatever stage, but it was obviously did not look like a entirely like a human baby at this point, and he said, he sort of invited, he baited the pro-life person. The pro-life person said, all I can tell you is that, I know that is a child of God or whatever. And the pro-choice person said, well, that's interesting because this is a picture of a baby dolphin, right? It's like there's no, at a certain stage, our concern really isn't rationally targeting the possible human suffering of a human being, right? And it's not enough to say that this is a...
Yeah, there's a point where it would be unrecognizable.
Potential human being, or this would be a human being if it only persisted in the right under the right conditions. Because again, this is a point I've made that with genetic engineering, every cell in the human body that has a nucleus is a potential human being. I mean, if you scratch your nose, you are culling the lives of of thousands of potential human beings, because we could just, these are just as viable given the right manipulations. These cells are just as viable as a fertilized ovum, right? So it can't be, the right answer can't be at the moment of conception, this single cell inherits all of the ethical gravitas of a fully intact human being who.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. That'd be absolutely ridiculous. I did MDMA twice, had a good experience and a semi-bad one. Yeah, it's understandable. Sometimes that happens. I've had less than desirable mushroom trips, right? But I've never had like a truly like bad trip that I was like really terrified from. But I did have that on acid, and I did have that on Molly. When I did Molly, was it Molly? No. I always get that confused. No, DMT. That's what it was. Yeah, I think that's different. I said the moment the fetus has conscious pain. Right, exactly. And like, how do you process pain? You have to have like a physical sensation, right? So it's dictated by like nerve endings interacting with, right? Because you're gonna experience like kids experience growing pains, right? Like, so you have pain just from the active growth itself, and that's not. So what he means by pain, right? I guess is kind of the problem. Like, it doesn't actually matter if it can process pain. Yeah, anything, in my opinion, that is unborn, right, up until the point when it's actually birthed, is kind of a potential living organism, but it's not yet living independently of the host, right? In this case, the mother.
You would be a moral monster to mistreat or kill, right? It just can't be the case. And to assert dogmatically that it simply is the case is a religious precept, right? And so where we draw the line between we're not worried about single cells in a petri dish and infanticide, that's difficult, and it might always seem arbitrary.
Well, you're making a case then for the democratic process to decide, But I would say at the point where it feels pain, I don't want to see women go to jail for long periods of time. It's kind of like drugs. Like, you don't actually want to put people in jail for taking drugs. But I'm sympathetic to making them illegal in certain cases because you just don't want to encourage people to do it. There's no good answer to that. Anytime I see...
Yeah, none of what you just said makes sense. Like, either you're going to incarcerate people for possessing or using drugs or you're not, right? And it doesn't make sense to do so. Like, if they do something untoward while they're under the influence, then incarcerate them for that, right? But why, if somebody is just merely guilty of being under the influence or possessing substances, why would you incarcerate them for that? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Somebody in jail for having done drugs. I say, this is crazy. Can't put somebody in jail for taking drugs. But how about legalizing heroin? No, I don't want to do that either. So I don't know how you penalize it, but,
Well, I think technology might change that.
I mean, like, I think, what they've kind of tended towards these days is trying to make it an offense that, basically there will be some type of fiscal penalty, right? We're going to charge you X amount of money that you obviously can't afford if you're a fucking drug addict, or you can go and take like a diversion class, right? Like, that's what I experienced through the court system. Like, most of the time they'll be like, okay, you can go to jail or you can go to rehab. Like, we can give you fines, or you can presumably in a lot of places, like, collect disability to go to treatment, right? So it's like, that's your options. And that makes a lot more sense, than incarcerating somebody who's already, and finding somebody who's already incapable, right, of
things. It's like, before there were seatbelts, nobody wore them because they didn't exist. But once there are seatbelts, you and you're a parent and you don't strap your kid in and your kid goes flying through a windshield, you're unconscionably negligent, right? And it's just that moral judgment is only made possible by the invention of the seatbelt, right? So there's going to be some breakthrough with respect to, how early we can detect pregnancies, or how early how much we can discern the possible subjectivity of a fetus, how easy it becomes to whether a fetus at a certain stage is viable. I mean, that has changed so much. I mean, like the fetuses, earlier and earlier are actually viable, right? So the line of...
Yeah, so it's not really about viability. Like, and you've got to consider that, like, just because a fetus is viable doesn't necessarily mean that it should come to term, right? When you're talking about what ought to happen.
Viability changes. Yeah, I mean, obviously you're on firm. If you become pregnant and you don't want the child, there is a completely blameless path open to you, which is to deliver the child and give it to a family that wants it. I mean, adoption is a great answer.
Yeah, that's one answer, but like, are you obligated to bring the fetus into the world, right? Like, it is your child. I'm in a position where I would feel worse, right? Like, imagine a scenario where you have this viable fetus, you bring it to term, you put it out in the world, and you're like, well, neither of the parents want to raise it, so they put it up for adoption. And then, yeah, sure, it has this experience. It's like, okay, so the child grows up, finds out that the parents gave it up for adoption, right? You got like a 50-50 chance either that parent, the child is going to, be gracious and like, be like, oh, they made the best decision for me, or they're going to start asking these other questions like, why didn't my biological parents want me, right? They're going to resent the parents for that, and that causes more distress, right? There's the possibility that the adoptive family themselves are abusive or unfit, right? And then by proxy, you're like, well, I thought it'd be better just not to terminate this fetus, but instead I caused an excessive amount of suffering by adopting them out to a family who ends up being like abusive or neglectful, and then they can resent me for that, right? So if I'm not just taking culpability for the fact that I'm bringing a child into the world, right? I don't know if I necessarily want to take the risk of just saying, oh, well, we should just allow this life to proceed, even if we have no stake in the outcome of it, right? Like, I can just say, well, I brought a baby into the world, and that's like good enough. Like, morally, I didn't, kill it before it had a chance to live, right? But if my actions cause further suffering, right, that I could have prevented, then why would I take that course of action? It doesn't make sense.
To that, and we could make that whole process much more attractive and easier for people somehow. But
see that,
yeah,
everything about the way he said that, make that more attractive for people. That's just no. There's something wrong with that type of thinking.
Like every
I
other
don't want to make the idea of like, oh, well, there's a fetus, so, make adoption more attractive because we just want to promote the idea of bringing more human lives into the world. That doesn't necessarily say that there's like human flourishing, right? It's not well-being. You're not talking about like a good life. You can't guarantee a good life. You have no say in whether or not that child's going to have a good life, right? Like, you relinquished all control, and you're just kind of like rolling the dice and hoping for the best.
In life,
you're playing craps with life.
Just dogmatism doesn't really help here.
Is that it? That's
it doesn't
craps?
illuminate.
I've never played craps, but I'm pretty
anything.
sure.
It just ends the conversation.
I suspect it's going to settle into a status, whatever you call status quo. That is, I suspect it will settle into a reality which is far less upsetting than what people are worried about. I think the red states are not going to. They might make noises about it in the beginning, but they don't want their kids being forced to have children. It's kind of like they said, let's repeal Obamacare, and then when they had the chance to repeal Obamacare, they actually didn't go through with it. Kansas voted to keep abortion. Ireland voted to allow abortion. I kind of think it's going to be all right. I know you don't agree, but I'm not really worried that it's going to be terrible.
Well, I'm not worried that it will be terrible for people who have access to sufficient resources, right? So I think it's more terrible for the poor and the desperate, as everything invariably is. But I mean, this is a case where it really is just, it penalizes the people who can't easily go to another state to get a necessary abortion if that's what, in fact, they want to do.
I kind of feel like between the mail order and, I don't know, I for some people it will, but the Roe versus Wade was such, like as you always say, rationally, it couldn't hold up. It made no sense, and you just can't expect that to hold. So,
yeah, no, if this is something we really care about, we'll figure out how to legislate it.
Yeah.
I think that's Roe v. Wade was always vulnerable.
I think there's a tremendous amount of hypocrisy and peer pressure on the part of the people who claim they don't want anybody to be able to get an abortion at conception. Let's see how it all pans out. You saw there was an article yesterday which we had an all-time record of abortions last year. So
really?
it has I'll email it to you afterwards. So I don't know what that means. but it hasn't been a crash in a number of abortions. All right, Sam Harris, I'm not going to keep you any longer.
Actually, I want to ask you one question, Noam,
Sure.
just to turn the tables on you. So, given your unique vantage point in the comedy world, do you think the pendulum of wokeness is swinging back in that part of culture? I mean, how is it for comedians these days to function on stage and off?
I think it absolutely has swung back. It swung back in reality. It's also swung back in the kind of corporate America coming to the realization that there wasn't really anything to be afraid of in the beginning. That it was kind of like the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain, for instance, when Spotify didn't do anything, when it turned out that Joe Rogan had said the N-word, and even worse, made a joke about black people in Planet of the Apes. You know, life went on.
Right.
There's all sorts of Netflix stood by Dave Chappelle, and this kind of exposed what was really going on. Further, I'll just give you a related, you know, how much abuse I took when I let Louis C.K. back on stage.
All right, man.
I think that.
Thank you.
And you know, horrible emails and threats, and had employees wearing a Comedy Cellar t-shirt spit on the subway. I mean, this was what the righteous people thought was appropriate. But more recently, I wrote a piece defending Yasha Monk on these on some charges that were made against him, and it was read by tens of thousands of people. I did not get one single critical email of anybody accusing me of being an apologist, or I'm trying not to go into the details as provoke anybody, but it was striking how different the atmosphere was to take a unwoke position now as it was just a few years ago. I don't know what your experience is.
Yeah, well, my experience is powerfully.
I'm no longer on social
Trying to
media, so I don't
switch
see
to
anything
my
of that sort.
Bluetooth
And
right now.
it's amazing. It's amazing
Wait a
because
second.
neither know nor care about what's happening.
Oh, and also Shane Gillis, Andrew Shaw, Shane Gillis's recent special, or even
No,
what
I
he
didn't.
said.
I just saw his return to SNL, but
Yeah, as arguing for an agent.
well, it's good to hear. So
Yeah.
you know, keep it up over there. You're fighting the good fight on the funny side of the battle.
As are you, and you really have. I mean, I know this is not for sure, but I re-listened to that interview that Ezra Klein did with you years ago already.
Sorry for that. That's painful. I haven't heard that in years, but
Don't listen to it.
yeah.
And just the bad faith and the way he was trying to back you into corners that would.
Poor Sam Harris. Okay, we got that over with. So go back to the beginning and take on the relevant points here that I want to talk about this morning. It's been a rough couple of days. So basically, I put in my official notice this week. So like my schedule will definitely be changing next month in some capacity. So so that's pretty much set in stone right now. So I'm going to make the most of these late nights and early mornings as best I can. Oh, what's up, William? Good to see you. William Freeman, Daniel Berry, Sports Highlights. Good morning. Abortions can be pretty violent. Well, they don't have to be. But, you know, I think taking the risk of having an abortion outweighs the risk of potential suffering if you don't have the means to guarantee for a child a certain expectation for a quality of life that we would expect, right? Like we might even say it's a matter of like it could be abusive or neglectful to bring a child into the world when abortion is an option, right? Depending upon the outcomes of having that child and the quality of their experience, you might be responsible for that. That's kind of my hot take, right? And from my position, I could say, you know, there's plenty of people with broken homes, you know, who come from broken homes and they have a bad quality of experience, and it's a far smaller number who actually are able to break that cycle and create a warm and loving environment for a child that doesn't have, I mean, obviously you can't account for everything, but you can really minimize the suffering that a child experiences, especially in the very early stages of development, right? If you know what you're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, then you shouldn't be a parent. And there's no reason to assume that if you bring a child into the world and you give it to another person, assuming that they have, that they are more competent than you, right? If you're not competent to care for the child yourself, why would you be competent to judge that the child ought to go with any other person other than yourself, right? You yourself can't care for the child, so how would you make a sound judgment that says that the child still ought to come into the world and go with some other human that you know nothing about, right? And you have no control over the situation. You're just making a further error.
Make you look bad rather than allow you to, in a good faith way, lay out, the rational arguments. It's just...
Oh my gosh. Okay. We'll come back to this. Little comedy in the interim. I was thinking about opening up a panel. Yeah, we'll see how that pans out. It's early, so.
Of all places.
Oh, thank you, sure. And you don't have to agree with me. That's just that's where my head's going. So, but yeah, I mean, I thought about this shit a bit, just a little bit.
But speaking of hazardous to your health and stress and sadness, I got my heart broken by two people in my life now. Well, aside from fucking girls, which we're not going to get into that video because I don't want to cry. And so, no, seriously though, I'm holding back tears as I say that. I've got my heart broken by the Green Mighty Morphin Power Ranger. And a Christian death metal vocalist. It doesn't get any more strange and amazing than that. So a really fucking cool guy that I met off of Craigslist, of all places, took me to a Demon Hunter show, and this dude was someone that I was jamming with. He lived in fucking Humble, Texas, which was pretty close to where I lived. Really fucking cool Latino guy. I remember being at his place. I saw this cute little picture of him as a little kid, like in his little, I don't know what you call this attire, but like, I think he was at some kind of, what are those events where it's like with a bull and you're like, Toro, this fucking bull event? I don't know. It was a bull event, guys. Anyways, I'm going off a tangent, son. I'm obviously from Texas. I need to stop fucking going on side tangents so much here, but anyways, bro, yeah, this homie, he hooked me up with a fucking ticket to see Demon Hunter. Really cool guy. Even offered to buy me an overpriced fucking shirt, you know what I'm saying? But I declined because I wasn't going to do that to the guy. Like, seriously, dude, if you charge $27 for a t-shirt, you're a piece of shit, man. Or I was hoping for maybe, would you like a free handy? And that pretty much means you're...
Would you like it? Well, it's not free. Free handy. That was good.
entitled to like me, okay, motherfucker? At least for that night. At least, at least the motherfucker let me do that, I guess. And I never forgot that to this day. This was over 10 years ago. I think like 10 to fucking 11, 12 years ago, maybe. Never forgot it to this day. Because I think about it every day and cry. I'm F-A-G-G-E-T-S. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video. Peace.
So we've got a great church, and we're pretty much by the book, and I've helped many lost souls find their way, so to speak.
We're not lost. Don't have a soul.
Wait, is this just a call to advertise your church?
Well, I just wanted to start off by welcoming you to join, if you want.
Well, thank
you. It sounds
you.
like you obviously don't belong to one now, do you?
No, you're right.
You're right, we don't.
But thank you for the
but
invite.
you did one time, didn't you?
I did.
Yes, I did as well.
So you didn't feel any warmth when you sang the hymns or listened to sermons or anything?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with whether
I
the
came to the
theology is
conclusion
true or
that
not.
feelings are not God.
Yeah.
So why exactly did you quit?
Well, I quit because I did a lot of research into how the Bible came to exist and also into church history, how the church came to exist. And when I realized that, in my view, I couldn't find anything to substantiate that there was a hand of God involved, I began to question the authority of the church and of the Bible. And at that point, I stopped being a Christian, but I maintained theism for about another 10 years while I searched to try to find out then if the Bible is a man-made book, and if the church founded upon Jesus is based on that Bible and is a man-made institution, then what really is God, and what would God want me to do? And so I aimed my search more toward just putting my life in the hands of whatever God was, that he would show me what was required, what I needed to do, just lead the way and I will follow. I'm searching. That went on for about 10 years until I came to the conclusion that if God is everything, pretty much that's pantheism. So I thought I was a pantheist for about a week. I guess I was a pantheist for about a week, and then I said, this is kind of ridiculous. It's the universe, and so we have a name for it, and God and matter are not the same thing. Material existence is material existence, and if that's what I'm calling God, then I might as well just say I'm an atheist.
Well, it seems to me that you can be a non-believer, but it's another step if you want to make a show and say you're an atheist and start to say these bitter things.
Well, why?
What have I said that's bitter?
Yeah, why do you think we're bitter?
Well, I mean, just the general tone I get from you is that you're actually mad or angry with God.
Gosh, we just
oh
had
my
that
goodness! Is this a joke? Are you a Poe? Is this a Poe, or are you for real? Are you calling just to pull our legs, or is this a serious call?
This is a serious call.
Okay, so now wait a second.
And,
do you understand that an atheist does not believe a God exists? Do you understand that? Do you understand that an atheist does not believe a God exists?
Yes, well, of course.
Okay, then do you understand? Okay, I'm not accusing you of being stupid. I just want to make sure we're clear on our definitions. If you understand I don't believe a God exists, how does the statement "I'm angry at God" make any sense at all?
Well, angry about religion, then, about
Thank you.
this so-called institution you call it.
It is an institution. I mean, even if you believe God produced it, it's still an institution, right? I mean, it's institutionalized.
Well,
for
you
sure.
said yourself that you felt some warmth when you went to church, that it just wasn't for you. But why do you have to make a show and say these things then?
Well, did you not hear the example of the homeopathic remedy? Did you hear what I just talked about? If not, I'm happy to repeat it. I mean, really, if you were on the phone and you were on hold and you weren't really hearing it, that's fine. I'm happy to give you the example again. But the point is, I said that there would even be people that don't believe in homeopathy that would write to you and say, well, some people are helped just because they feel better because of a placebo effect. So why are you bitching about homeopathy? But the fact is, there's a lot of people harmed by homeopathy.
Well,
and
who does the church harm?
Who does the church harm?
Are you kidding?
We have, first of all, Christians in Nigeria who are killing their own children because God said to not suffer witches to live, and they believe their children are witches. We have Christians in Uganda who are passing laws they wanted to execute homosexuals as a crime, but now they've made it life in prison. We have Christians in Africa that are missioning and telling people in AIDS-ridden nations not to wear condoms. We have Christians here in Austin, Texas, who don't think that a woman should have a right to choose, that are down on women's rights. We have Christians across the U.S. who are trying to trample the rights of gays, who are trying to keep them from...
I personally find it a bit insulting for you to say that my church is bad people. They're good people at my church.
We didn't say...
When did I say that your church is bad?
It's not like he just put on an accent. It was he wasn't using his accent. Just he put on a drawl right there. I'll call it bullshit. This is a prank call. Prank call. Gotta love Jen and Tracy's composure, though. See, these are the classic episodes I love.
People, you asked me to give you examples of the harm that religion causes, and I just listed some. You don't
think they're atheists who do bad things? I could tell you about them. How would that make you feel?
Wait a minute.
Well,
you didn't ask me to provide examples of that. You asked me specifically for examples of the harm that religion causes. You asked for that, and I provided it. How is that offensive to you?
Well, I didn't do anything wrong to anyone. In fact, I think I'm a pretty
No,
good
You
no one
didn't
said you
ask me
did.
to give you examples of wrong you've done. You asked me to give examples of harm that the church has caused, that religion has caused, and I provided those examples. How is that a problem?
Well,
why should that offend you? Why did you even ask for examples if getting those examples was going to upset you?
All right, then. Well,
I'm just a big dum-dum poo-poo head.
Why don't you just have someone like Dr. Craig on your show? Why do you always beat up on random people who call in? Why don't you have some actual
No.
theologians on
Who
your
am I
show?
beating up?
William Lane Craig. Master debater.
Stop. We're not beating up anybody.
I'm answering your question.
And listen, there are however many religious shows on public access television and network television. And
Isabella is the only one who has access to my body.
In a Walmart that's got 4 or 5 kids basically wearing rags and saying, it's right. You believe the fucking day. You being Andrew's bitch. But when you have a job, sits on YouTube.
They represent the power that is behind that badge of his. No. As the plaintiff, when I'm in that courtroom. Well, somebody's giving me a warning. Who's giving me a
Someone's
warning?
giving you a warning?
Somebody's giving me a warning. You know what? Okay, yeah. Let me address that issue.
People are fucking losers.
Some of these fuckers. Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. Some of these dunderheads out there don't have a clue what's going on. When I'm in that courtroom, I'm the plaintiff, not the defendant. I'm the plaintiff, not the defendant. Now you say, well, what does that mean? When I'm in that court, and it doesn't matter whether it's family court, district court, or circuit court. When I'm in that courtroom and I'm the plaintiff, I represent the county sheriff. I am
This guy fucking cracks me up.
not in there under my own steam, because that's what a lot of people think. Oh, well, he's in there under. No. As the plaintiff, I'm not there under my own power. I represent the county sheriff and the full power thereof. Okay, so me and the judge are literally the power of the county sheriff. Now, if I was a defendant and I was defending myself in court, then yes, I would be there under my own power. But when I'm the plaintiff, I represent that county sheriff, and I literally represent the power that is behind that badge of his. That's why I have to be on my best behavior. I have to have my T's crossed and my I's dotted, and I got to have, be fully aware of the law, and I got to know what the hell I'm doing. Okay? But I'm not in there under my own power. So, these trolls that think, oh, well, he's in there under his own power. He's got, so he can do, he can't do anything. He can't, no. I'm the
You're going to get a rude awakening. That's it.
Yeah, you got a rude awakening coming because I'm the plaintiff. I have the full power of the county sheriff behind me. Okay, which is why I have to, why I have to be on my best behavior and I have to know what the fuck I'm doing when I'm in.
Don't be nervous, Sam. I'm kidding. I'm nervous. Mr. Sam Harris, who's probably at the point of not needing an introduction, but he's a famous podcaster, a neuroscientist, an author, and I think one of the great thinkers there are right now. So welcome, Mr. Sam Harris.
Well, thank you, Noam. Great to see you.
Great to see you. So look, let's just get into it. I don't want to keep you forever. You've come out with, and I haven't actually checked in the last few weeks, but you came out with a few very, very forceful defenses of Israel, the action in Gaza, and just a general world view which paints Israel as a force for good in a way against a kind of a civilizational battle against radical Islam. Do you feel as strongly about it now as you did at the outset of the war?
Yeah, I do. My position on Israel and anti-Semitism and related topics is somewhat difficult to summarize. I mean, it can sound somewhat paradoxical. I mean, for instance, my position against organized religion is such, and religious identities is such that, I'm uncomfortable in simply asserting that the world is a Jewish state. Certainly Jewish,
Yeah, and so I can kind of summarize it that way. He's like picking Israel, right, as like a lesser of two evils, right? In this instance. And I don't think that's the correct position to take.
If you, as construed in religious terms rather than ethnic terms, but given the genocidal anti-Semitism of so many.
So there's this concept of ethnic Jews. Not
the world.
I'm kind of uncertain what that even means at this point.
Historically, I think that's all the justification one needs to figure out how to give the Jews a state that represents real safety and sovereignty, right? So it's, if there has to be a state organized around a religion, I think a Jewish state should be the last one. Obviously, I'm not a fan of Christian states and Muslim states either. So anyway, that's a mouthful, and that doesn't sound like
religious statehood is antithetical to the idea of secular democracy, right?
Straightforward support of Israel, except for the fact that I view Israel's struggle against Hamas as as a kind of canary in the coal mine example for a much larger civilizational struggle that you referred to, which is the fight for open societies and liberal, tolerant societies everywhere, in defense of a very real assault on their core values. And this assault is coming from one religion above all, and that religion is Islam. And there really needs to be a civil war within the Muslim world for the soul of Islam. If Islam is really a religion of peace that's getting hijacked by extremists, well then Muslims everywhere need to unite against their extremists. And if they can't figure that out, well then...
I mean, so that's true, right? Sympathizing with like a jihadist and suicide bombers, right? Like, it's not a good look. It doesn't help your cause, right? And you need to find a way to enact like legit reform. I mean, otherwise you are engaged in a process of self-destruction, right? It's in the dogma of your religion. You're just going to continue like this. It's a mutually assured destruction clause.
We've got a much larger problem with Islam, right? So it remains to be demonstrated that Islam is compatible with modernity. I certainly hope it is. There's around 2 billion Muslims on Earth, and certainly many, many millions of them want to live in the modern world and don't want to live like medieval barbarians. But many of their co-religionists are, in fact, barbarians. And Hamas is a group that is it's not even the most barbaric jihadist group on offer.
Max, I just want to look at something. Let's see what comes up here.
As the elections nears in Canada, the Canadian government, now led by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, has unveiled plans to introduce halal mortgages as a part of its effort to enhance access to home financing options, particularly for the Muslim community in Canada. This initiative, outlined in the annual budget, now underscores a commitment to address the diverse need of aspiring homeowners across the country. In consultations with the financial service providers and communities, the government seeks input about potential policy changes to facilitate the availability of halal mortgages. These include exploring tax adjustment treatment and considering the establishment of a regulatory sandbox for financial institutions, ensuring a robust consumer protection is in place.
Canadian Prime Minister slammed for pushing Sharia-compliant mortgages for Muslims. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal government has sparked backlash by announcing plans to introduce halal mortgages that comply with Islamic finance rules against paying interest. In the recent 2024 budget, the government proposed consulting with lenders to offer Sharia-compliant home financing options like halal mortgages, which are aimed at helping Muslim Canadians become homeowners. Trudeau enthusiastically touted it, quote, as a testament to our commitment to fostering an inclusive society where everyone has equal access to opportunities. Specific proposals include the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation providing Islamic banks funding to offer halal mortgages, potential tax changes for such products, and a regulatory sandbox for lenders. While some smaller institutions already provide Sharia-compliant financing, none of Canada's 5 biggest banks currently offer halal mortgages that avoid interest through alternatives like rental-based payments. The budget also proposed developing more Islamic banking offerings and establishing a national zakat fund for Muslim charitable giving, drawing criticism that the policies unfairly benefit one religious group. Supporters like the Canadian Islamic Congress, however, hailed it as a historic moment, enabling Muslims to participate more fully in the Canadian economy. So, let's okay, there's so much to unpack here. Trudeau, Ayatollah Trudeau, why are you doing this absolute bullshit? Okay, so we need to back up and explain some basics for people that don't understand what's going on here. So for those who may not be aware, there is a concept in Sharia, in Islam, called riba. And riba is usury. Riba is understood to be interest. It is understood to be forbidden. It is one of the worst sins, actually. Many scholars believe that it's like shirk, riba, in terms of like how severe. It's a very major sin. Engaging in interest is seen as very, very sinful and forbidden. And so, when it's very
Islam
difficult,
is anti-capitalist.
if you are the type of Muslim
I kind of like that.
that is so observant that you refuse to take out a loan because it has interest, this has major economic consequences to you, because interest is a foundational part of a modern economy. And basically, this will obviously make home ownership for you a lot more difficult if you are this observant, very, very observant, like to take on this level of a financial burden. And so there are all of these schemes that are basically scams to help people do complicated financial gymnastics to still get a home, but not engage in riba. And the problem is that and so pushing forward as an idea to roll out into Canada at a larger scale, because there's already smaller institutions that do this, and then he's basically pushing for larger institutions to do this as well. Before I dig into it more deeply, Armin, I want your reaction.
Right, so I have 4 reactions. First of all, this is a violation of secularism, where governments are basically coming in and using religious belief as a way to come up with policies. This is a violation of secularism, right? And it's not just any violation. So second point, this is not just any violation of secularism. This is a recognition of Islamic laws, which is basically legitimizing divine authority of Allah coming down from the Canadian government. So this is when you recognize legitimize their rulings, their Islamic practices, Islamic beliefs. That's basically a government taking a position and putting a stamp of approval on the philosophy from such an ideology.
Lumify? It's kind of amazing. Wow. Lumify eye drops dramatically reduce redness.
It's not even the most barbaric jihadist group on offer. That distinction would go to the Islamic State. But given what happened on October 7th, we should have no illusions about what they are capable of and what they aspire to do. And so, in its current conflict with Hamas, yes, I support Israel 100%, and I think there is no outcome here that's acceptable apart from an unconditional defeat of Hamas.
Let me ask you a couple questions and then get to the war. Just because I always find it interesting, I've heard you say this before. I know that Judaism is a religion, but I don't define my attachment to Judaism or my feeling of being Jewish, nor did my father or most of the Jews I grew up with, as anything other than an ethnic identification, which is verifiable genetically, and by every measure that any ethnic identification can be measured, I think.
Yeah, and that's what's confusing about Judaism as an identity to discuss in a context like this, because obviously there are religious Jews who believe that the creator of the universe gave them the specific piece of land between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean, and their evidence for that is in the Bible.
Right, which is kind of like the issue, right? It's like how do you legitimize the Jewish statehood?
And their attachment to that land is framed very much in religious and even prophetic terms.
Yeah,
they're Jews
it's
waiting for the Messiah to return and all of that. And so that's
But these were not the ideas of early Zionists. They were not. That was not there. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. Yeah. So yeah, and it's more confusing still that Zionism historically has not been an explicitly religious imperative. So the thing that is most confusing is that you can find examples of religious Jews who are seemingly as fanatical as Islamists and even jihadists in their own context. I mean, that the religion is different, the principles are different, the calls for violence are slightly different. But you can find your crackpot Jew in the Holy Land. You stick a microphone in front of his face, and he can sound like he's a member of some Jewish equivalent of Hamas, right? And the uneducated consumer of that media in the West can then consider that evidence that there really is no distinction between the fanaticism on the Islamic side, or the Palestinian side in this case, and the fanaticism on the Israeli and Jewish side. That's just not true. Yeah, but that gets, I'm noticing a lot of that gets spun up now, and they're even, there are the gradations of this. There are Jews now who are calling for the resettlement of Gaza, and calling for rather explicitly for, something like ethnic cleansing to get the Palestinians out of Gaza, so that place can be turned into a proper part of Israeli civilization. It's anybody's guess whether a two-state solution is at all a viable project at this point. I somehow don't see it, and so I don't know what the alternatives to that are. But it's obvious that it's quite inflammatory to have Jews at this moment calling for ethnic cleansing in Gaza, given all the assurances that that's actually not any sane person's motive. Again, all of this is only really a problem because the Israelis have never had a partner in peace, really, in the Palestinian people. It's easy to say that Hamas doesn't represent the Palestinians in general, and I'm sure that is true, at least in part, but obviously there's no bright line between Hamas and the kinds of attitude towards Jews that brought Hamas into power among the Palestinians. So it's a complicated picture, but the very simple framing, which I think is nonetheless true, is that we have a problem. We being Western civilized people who want to live in open societies and tolerate all manner of human difference, have a problem trying to integrate the religious triumphalism and fanaticism and frank lunacy of jihadists. And jihadists in a certain number are simply intolerable to us. And again, this is not just non-Muslims. This should be true of all Muslims who want to live sane lives in the 21st century.
No, I think like a big part of the problem is if Sam adopts this language, right? He adopts this language that does sound on its face. It sounds intolerant, right? The way that he articulates this, right, is not it sounds inecumenical, right?
Deal breaker, and we have to figure out how to act on that premise in 100 countries.
Let me ask you how you respond to this. I grew up, knowing hundreds of Muslim Arabic people, and if I had not been aware of what went on in the rest of the world, I would have found it impossible to believe that what we know is going on there in terms of jihad and radical Islam was true. I say, I know hundreds of Muslim people. None of them are like that. None of them would approve of that, and yet it is true. How do you explain that? How do you explain that?
Well, it's just making friends with people in any community is not a valid way of doing real opinion research at a population level. It doesn't matter how many people you know or have met or have befriended. There are lots of problems.
Yeah, I mean, clearly we found this out. Never mind. I'm not even gonna go there.
In extrapolating from those encounters with the populations in whole societies, right? So, first of all, the people who would become your friends.
He's not going to say it either, but he's thinking the same thing I am right now. I can guarantee you that.
There are people in the Muslim community.
Maybe because they also work with me. There was a certain randomness to the way I came upon them, and they may not be frank with me, but somehow there seems to be less jihadism in the American Muslim community.
I believe that's true. Yeah, that's true. That's a kind of a happy accident of just how people got here. I think Western Europe has a bigger problem. But it is hard to really plumb the depths of people's beliefs and what those beliefs entail given the right conditions, right? It would have been hard, I think, to have made friends in throughout Europe in the late 19th century, early 20th century, and have detected in the smiles and cultural attitudes of ordinary people a propensity for genocidal violence against the Jews. But of course, the Third Reich managed to unmask that propensity, not just in German citizens, but throughout Europe. I mean, it's quite, if you read the history of the Holocaust, the assumption that it was accomplished, largely, or almost entirely as a result of sort of the industrial killing apparatus, typified by a place like Auschwitz, and then only a few people really had to get this diabolical machinery moving, and a genocide was accomplished. That's really not true. I mean, the level of collaboration throughout not just German society, but in every country they invaded, or even almost invaded. The countries that were given an ultimatum, countries that were given just the slightest nudge in the direction of genocide. They found all too willing executioners, to use Goldhagen's phrase, throughout Europe. In Romania and Ukraine and Croatia and Latvia and Lithuania. And I mean, it was incredible what happened. And I think it would have been certainly true to say that many of the Jews who were annihilated by their neighbors had considered those neighbors friends up until the moment that the genocide got rolling. So it's just at this point in history, the lesson I would draw from that is not.
So at this point, that's where he's drawing this correlation to the Holocaust, right?
Every person, there's a boundless propensity for evil, but that when you have a group of people or a wider culture that speaks casually of genocide and its aspiration to commit it, we should take them seriously, right? We should never assume that people are bluffing when they say they want to eradicate a whole population.
There's kind of a problem with all of the Abrahamic faiths in the sense, because kind of all of them call for, eventually there would be a culling of people who are non-believers, right? Christians have the end times and Revelations, right? And so obviously Islam has kind of its own version of this, right? They're pushing towards, and so this was, there is an imperative to see this thing come to fruition, right? It's not just that you believe it's going to happen, it's that you think there would be a reward for yourself or your descendants or what have you, if you actually kind of perpetuate or this outcome, right? This is your duty.
The charter, the original charter of Hamas, it was explicitly genocidal. The talk about Jews throughout the Muslim world, frankly, has been genocidal for quite a long time. The Palestinians teach, effectively, they teach a genocidal hatred of Jews to children in schools, right? Many of these schools are UN funded. Right? There's just a ghastly culture here of religiously inspired hatred that we have to figure out how to perform an exorcism on, right? I mean, there's just no way that this can be maintained and we can expect to arrive at anything like a lasting peace for, in the Middle East. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, we have to take these possibilities seriously, because now we know in the aftermath of several genocides that people are quite capable of it.
Now, when you say an exorcism, people are going to hear war, violence. We're not going to persuade them or say a prayer. What kind of exorcism can there be other than just time working its own magic, burning out somehow?
Yeah, no, I do think there's a role for war, because I think jihadism has to lose, right? I mean, this is why a call for a ceasefire at this point in Gaza strikes me as so wrong-headed. I mean, first we have to admit how catastrophic the
so everything I'm
consequences.
about to say here, I think it's just it's a bit pig-headed, right? Like he's going to try to justify why we need to annihilate this threat, right? Why we, if we are rational actors, we would annihilate this threat, right? That is not, right? Coming from this standpoint, right, what you are talking about is facilitating engagement, right? Like becoming involved in engagement that is not yours. Like nationalistically, right? On some ethical standpoint, you have basically on ethnic Judaism, right? So this would be equivalent to, like, say, like Rome was under siege, right? And you're like, well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I may be anti-Catholic, I may not agree with, right? But in this case, the rational choice, right, is to side with, like, essentially the person who, like, I perceive is morally righteous, right? It doesn't actually matter that they're morally righteous, right? They are at an advantage. They're not, like, directly aligned with your interest, right? So you can't, like, clearly define why. You just have some kind of vague belief that this is the good guy, right? It's like you're rooting for them in the film, except it goes to the next level, because now you're talking about arming people, you're talking about funding people, you're talking about potentially sending in your own combatants, right, to defend a people, based on the fact that they are the enemy of your enemy.
This war have been in Gaza. I mean, it's just horrific, and it's entirely the fault of Hamas. I mean, Hamas is using a civilian population as human shields, quite deliberately. I mean, this is just a tactic of war that is unconscionable. And for
that was stupid.
And for
and he's not wrong about that either, right? But, so Islam is notoriously terrible about using those types of tactics. So all those points that Sam makes about guerrilla warfare and everything are really logical, right? But that's not actually right. It doesn't, like, because obviously there's collateral damage in any war. So I don't think that's like, we're not in a position, right? We can say, oh, that's really ugly, that's disgusting, right? But we're not really in a position to pass judgment. Because we ourselves are guilty of the same atrocities at some point in history, right? We can just say, oh, well, we'd like to prevent that, but we could say that we have committed those same crimes, right? So we can kind of sympathize with how that would occur.
deterred by that is synonymous with their own suicide, effectively. I mean, they can't live with Hamas on their border in the aftermath of October 7th. So I think jihadism as a project throughout the Muslim world has to be revealed to be a dead end, right? Like the religious triumphalism, the expectation of ultimate victory here on the part of the most fanatical Muslims on earth has to be embarrassed again and again and again. And humiliation is actually the proper goal, right? And the idea that there's some kind of compromise, some kind of faith-saving compromise to make with these people. Again, the most fanatical religious.
I think it's problematic, right? As an outspoken atheist, as somebody who takes up this position that like all religions are evil, right? Like they are fundamentally bad, right? Like there's some harm derived from each religious conviction, right? And then to say, well, we at this point in history we need to pick one over the other, right? I think if you're going to be critical, like on the grounds of religious conviction, then you need to be consistent about that across the board. Circumstances don't actually affect, right? So when you're criticizing them, you can criticize the state, and that's fine. But when you criticize it, when you justify that by assessing religious conviction, right? You could say that other people have equally reprehensible religious convictions. They just don't take action based on those. Like it's not equivalent in the sense that they're not presently taking action on that. But if they were to act on things in such a way, then they would be equally culpable.
Some world, the people who take the principles of martyrdom all too seriously, the people who think blasphemy and apostasy is a killing offense, right? There can be no compromise with these attitudes. This is a war. They have declared war on us. They declare war on us every day. They articulate their vision of life. I mean, when they say things like "we love death more than the infidels love life," or "we love death more than the Jews love life," or "we love death more than the Americans love life," we have to take them at their word, right? And
our soldiers say like very similar things though. Like even now, like it's if you in the military, like. Like they love killing babies and stuff like that because that's what our infantry needs in order to function. They need to be desensitized to the act of killing, desensitized to the fact that they really don't have control in which engagements they become entrenched in, right? Like if they end up getting ordered to bomb a school, they're going to do that, right? They're not going to question those orders because that is how militaries function, right? This is how combat is done effectively, right? And if we don't desensitize our soldiers to killing, then we end up with more soldiers who are either retreating on the front lines, right, or committing acts of cowardice and insubordination, or they're coming back damaged, right, from like post-traumatic stress disorder or something like that, right, because their minds are not equipped to process the damage that they have done to other humans, right? So you have to humanize your adversary. You have to create a situation in which it is them or you, and if you do not take this action, right, then you are as good as dead, right? So it was always my life was on the line, right, to justify any action, regardless of whether or not you were actually in immediate danger.
Some number of these people obviously need to be martyred, right? I mean, there's no, the moment they have the power to kill Jews and apostates and infidels, that's what they intend to do, right? So the war is already on, whatever happens in Gaza. And I think, yeah, the idea that we are going to make some kind of rational terrestrial concession with these people that's going to mollify them is just a masochistic fantasy. And it's belied by the fact that they clearly articulate their plans to themselves and to us given every opportunity. I mean, every ceasefire is, in their view, just an opportunity to regather strength so as to further prosecute their war against the West, against the Jews, against the great Satan, etc. This has to come to an end, and the majority of the world's Muslims have to help bring it to an end, right? I mean, and there's some signs that the various regimes with whom Israel is hoping to broker a lasting peace. I mean, even the Saudis, who have done so much to export jihadism to the rest of the world, when you look at the regime itself, they seem to be at the end of their patience with this kind of theocratic craziness. and that it remains to be seen whether that they in fact are. But yeah, there is no possibility of compromise with this subset of the Muslim world. Just as there was no compromise with real Nazism. I mean, there was no compromise with Hitler, and any notion that there was profoundly dangerous. As we
right here, right, I think it's the point where they're going to stop it up and say, oh well, it's apologizing for Nazis, right? And he's gonna paint a picture and saying that this is more dangerous, right? The fact that there was, we're trying to compromise with radical Islam as a whole, right? Which is not necessarily a state, but when you're talking about the the state as it is, right, is run by like a caliphate or whatever, so that their religious doctrines do in fact dictate, right, their moral compass as a society. And so he's not equivocating the two, right? That's a misconception here. The statement he's making is that this one is like the immediate threat to us. And the fact that folks are making concessions to this threat, right, he's saying is exactly the way that fascists came into power, right, before World War II, right, was that people were intimidated to challenge not the state itself, right, but the ideology that informed the action of the state. That was the thing that wasn't being challenged.
All right, let's touch on for a minute some of the difficult details. I think I intuit that you feel the same way as I do about what I'm about to say. I don't rely on my side of an argument to expose the flaws in the argument or to expose the exaggerations or the things that turn out not to be true. So I listen carefully to people like Max Blumenthal.
Oh, that's where you lost me.
Well, no.
You lost me on Max Blumenthal.
Well, no, I probably won't. Not people I abhor. Because if Israel is exaggerating how many baby heads, or baby heads, or the details of the sexual assaults, he's the one who's going to put his mind to it to find them out. And I don't want to be ever guilty of dismissing him. And then quite often, some detail turns out to be true, and then he benefits too much from the fact that we dismissed him, as opposed to saying, yeah, both sides always overreach, both sides might always exaggerate or jump to a conclusion because they're hot-blooded.
Well, in this case, you're arguing against a journalist or a political commentator, right?
Max, you were right about that.
So you're more afraid of upholding your reputation, not being exposed as being wrong, right? This is not really an ideological, you're more worried about being wrong on like a particular claim.
That stuff, seriously, I dismiss most of it from time to time. He's onto something, right? Not in good faith, but he's onto something. So, on this issue of, for instance, delivering aid in a proper way to Gaza, how do you see that? Do you feel Israel has done everything? Faith?
Well, I don't consider myself well informed enough about the specifics of aid and what has happened and not happened there, what was possible and not possible. I mean, generally speaking, I think the following is true: that Israel is now being forced to fight a defensive and really existential war under more scrutiny than any Western power has ever had to endure when fighting a war of any kind. Right. So this is like the most watched war in human history.
I don't know if that's true, actually. I'm gonna reserve judgment on that, because I know Afghanistan was watched very closely. I'm actually gonna do some digging into recent events here pretty soon, because I'm kind of tuned out from the news. But I mean, as far as it being like in your face all the time, I mean, Afghanistan was inescapable.
And it's watched with a tremendous amount of bias to the disadvantage of Israel, right? So Israel is executing a kind of high wire act, and again, they're fighting people who are using the civilian population as human shields, right? What they're fighting is worse than an ordinary guerrilla war. I mean, every guerrilla war has some part of this characteristic, which is, the combatants, hide within a civilian population, and they don't wear proper uniforms, and they don't, fight in formations that are discernible, etc. But Hamas's use of these tactics is altogether obscene and designed to maximize civilian casualties, right? And this is not just Hamas. This is what jihadists routinely do in their own population. So Israel's having to fight under conditions.
At Sutter, 26,000 new arrivals never stop delivering joy. And 352 OBs never stop delivering moms more options and more support. Getting better never stops.
Comrades, this is Big Brother, and I am always watching.
Truth exists, and what is done cannot be undone.
Freedom is slavery.
Freedom is holding on to memory, to truth, to say 2 + 2 makes 4.
1984.
Under conditions that are quite different from anything the U.S. or the U.K. or France or any of our Western allies ever had to face. And just the deck is just stacked against it. Everything is spun to its disadvantage. Just the fact that there are more UN resolutions against Israel than against all other nations combined, right? That's the environment in which Israel is having to fight this war. We're talking about an environment wherein immediately after October 7th, before Israel had done anything, the world was already blaming Israel and castigating it for even considering defending itself. While the bodies of families were still smoldering, right? It's a completely insane situation, and the fact that so many millions of people can't discern the moral high ground here makes it very difficult for Israel not to commit acts that are viewed as.
I also question though, what is the moral high ground here? Again, how are you defending? Right, because it is an occupation, right? You're defending occupation of a territory without, you're not actually addressing the argument, right? That's kind of how we say, well, tough cookies, that's a tough titties, and that's kind of what you're telling the people who are there. That's why they are enraged. That's why they are frustrated, right?
Needlessly destructive, right? Because the whole effort to defend itself is viewed as a war crime by so many millions of people, right? So that's the context. I think within that context, Israel has almost certainly taken greater pains to mitigate the avoidable loss of civilian life than we or our allies have ever did in situations that were not quite analogous, right? When we went into Iraq to kill the Islamic State, we weren't fighting an existential war for the defense of American civilization.
That depends upon who you ask. I mean, a lot of people, if they didn't believe that, right? Because at the time, the claim that was made, the justification that was used for both of those wars, right? What was it?
Nobody was watching to the same degree, and it's just to say nothing of the protests that were never going to happen and never did happen over what Assad did to 300,000 or so Muslims in Syria, right? I mean, where were the protests there? Where were the tsunami of videos on social media? It just didn't happen. So people really seem to care when non-Muslims kill Muslims, and they really, really care when Jews kill Muslims, right? That's the thing that is just PR plutonium in this world. And I just think those variables are the things we need to ignore, right? I'm not saying that Israel hasn't committed any war crimes. I'm certainly not in a position to know whether or not they have. I can only assume they have, right? I mean, this is a war after all, right? I'm sure it's.
I can only assume they have. It's a war. War crimes are inevitable in war.
Israeli soldiers desecrating the dead bodies of civilians or taking trophies, or have there been mass rapes of Palestinian women by Israeli soldiers? I haven't heard of anything like that, but if we did hear of something like that happening, that would be awful, and Israel is precisely the type of society that would abhor that and prosecute the perpetrators, right? I mean, that's the difference, right? The concept of a war crime is still viable in Israel, and people are taking pains to guard against it, but that doesn't mean there aren't going to be examples.
And that's another good point, right? Okay, so at least, you're defending a society that actually prosecute those criminals, like in some idealistic, sense. Like, okay, so we can kind of, again, align ideologically, right? It doesn't give you a rational justification. Just I agree with the way they operate.
Terrible behavior in time of war, because I would expect that. I just think that Israel is being held to a standard that no other society has ever been held to, and as to how well they're functioning by that standard, that will be for history to judge.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they have every incentive to do this as cleanly as possible, because the only threat to them is not military. It's the result of some sort of bad public relations. In fact, this is what is bringing people. That's what will upend them. Just one last question about Israel. I've heard the argument, and I actually thought about it.
They're like 27 minutes in. He says, it's just one last question. They're going to go on for another half an hour about it, loosely, which is why, again, I started at the end of this video and then came back to the beginning. So, yeah. But this is, these are the statements. So there's one from his podcast and then from this interview. These very inflammatory statements that apparently he's made to upset our liberal counterparts, especially in the atheist community, who are now defending, right? They're defending the Islamic State, right? Because the argument being that Sam's making a false equivalency between Hamas and Nazis or something, right? Like that's actually that was the argument that we were talking about a few weeks ago, and which is why we're here. Again, like I stated this the other day, there's no reason you have to support either cause, right? And Jill kind of brought this up in the the U.S. politics, and my response to that, like, because he keeps saying, well, essentially, right, if you're not supporting Trump, then you are effectively a Biden supporter, right? Regardless of the fact that I support neither candidate, right? And if I'm a Biden supporter, then obviously I am okay with pedophilia, right? Because if Biden is accused of pedophilia, based on those grounds, I'm supporting a pedophile as president, regardless of the fact that I don't actually support that person, because I don't support his opposition. Effectively, I am aligned with that somehow. And regardless of whether or not I believe the claim, because the accusation has been made, I should just take a position that says, oh, well, I'm just going to assume that this accusation is true, regardless of the fact that it's not really, evidence or corroborated, right? And operate under those guidelines, like as if this person was somebody who I would automatically abhor anyway, right?
What happened in Gaza was a little unique because it was a total example of Israel asleep at the switch. They kind of left the door unlocked, and Hamas came through it. And to prevent something like that again in the future, no matter how much Hamas swears they want to do it, if they were just a little bit more attentive going forward, it might not happen again and worry about it for another 50 years. So why go through all this killing, all this horrible repercussions to innocent people, when they could probably react to it and be sure they were not threatened with it again simply by, redoubling their efforts to be careful?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I don't know how confident anyone could ever be in that strategy of just, like a reboot to the status quo. We're just going to watch the fence a little more closely than we were on October 7th. Honestly, I don't know how Israel is ultimately viable given the status quo, right? I don't see how Israel can endure with Hamas or with Hezbollah in the north or with Iran, ultimately. Right? Honestly, I don't know how we avoid a larger war here, really, ultimately. I think it's just a matter of time before Israel's at war with Hezbollah and that Israel and probably the United States are at war with Iran. I just think jihadists have to lose across the board. I just think this is true in contexts that have nothing to do with Israel or even the West, right? I think Boko Haram in Nigeria.
So, and he was just displaying a bias, right? I mean, which is fine. You can have that bias, but call it what it is, right? A bias against Islamist extremism, religious extremism of any kind, but in this case, an exceptional bias towards Islamic extremism, in which you do not, right? And this is the crucial point. You are kind of advocating that it be eradicated indiscriminately, right? You're saying anywhere we perceive it, wipe it out, stomp that ideology out, right? That is your position. Just crush those people, right? And so that is kind of a fascist standpoint, right? You're saying that it is so dangerous to your in your view, right? To your way of life, it is so dangerous that I want it to be squashed immediately, destroyed. There is no reasoning with it, right? And this is important. Like, the way you word this is important. And it seems veiled to people if you try to say this kindly, right? There's not really a polite way to say this ideology is extremely dangerous, and I think it should just, people who sincerely believe it do not deserve the opportunity of a fair hearing, right? Is essentially what you're saying. Like, I cannot take the risk of trying to give this group of individuals a fair hearing. Right? They must be eradicated.
Has to lose, right? And we'll also just figure out how to engineer that defeat as quickly as possible. I mean, they're using children as suicide bombers. Again, in a conflict that has nothing to do with us, right? These people are absolute savages, and they're making the possibility.
I think that's one of the lines, like, when he calls people savages, it's going to be taken in a context, which is, it's like, okay, when you use that word, right, you gotta know the woke are coming for you. You cannot use the word savages. It's indicative of like Native Americans and conquested civilizations, right? This is, taboo. Bad Sam Harris. Bad Sam Harris. Haven't you touched the fireplace enough times yet?
The most basic human happiness, unthinkable, for reasons that have nothing to do with necessity and everything to do with just the utter religious bamboozlement of a whole generation. People say you can't bomb ideas. Well, actually, you can bomb ideas, right? I mean, it's just, we have to figure out how to discredit the ideas,
You cannot bomb ideas. Why would you say that? Why would you say, actually, you can bomb ideas? You can bomb people that believe ideas. You can burn down libraries.
There's just no question that certain people have to be militarily defeated, right? And the rest of a society needs to see the example of that. They have to understand that the whole project was misconceived. And
so now he says, we have to make an example of it. We have to make an example of it. Now this, right? This is also dangerous, right? And I'm not siding with Islamic extremists. I'm just saying that using this kind of language, how do you, like, you have to find a way to again, advocate for reform, right? It's the only thing you can really do, because if you talk about stomping out, right, an idea, people will automatically rally behind it. It doesn't matter what the idea, it can be the worst idea ever, but because it is an abstraction, right, a concept and not a concrete reality, it's like, okay, like look at any strange phenomena, some fringe movement that you can justify. Like you can jump through hoops, perform mental gymnastics to justify like really horrible things, right? If you place enough, whatever contingent facts in there, you can justify really terrible things. So the fact that something exists as an idea is just an inconvenient truth. And any time that you try to eradicate an idea, there will be some number of people who rally behind that idea and say, I reserve the right to hold this thing in my mind, right? It doesn't matter, like, I would never do it, and I would never put it into practice, but philosophically, I always have the right to have this idea in my mind. If you say we're trying to destroy an idea, you're propping up the notion, right, that thought crime exists, right? And it's something that I would be fundamentally against. Anything that says something that occurs as a process of my mind, my imagination, could ever be truly wrong, right? Anything you imagine can't be wrong. It can only be wrong if you put it into practice in reality. It's the only time you can ever register the thing as wrong. Thinking about the thing is never wrong. Everybody thinks about killing. It's those people that do killing that are wrong. Nobody is ever called wrong for thinking about doing it. They're only called wrong if they put it into practice.
Germany or Imperial Japan is a good one. It's misleading. We've seen that it's misleading with respect to the prospects of nation building. I mean, the lesson we drew from the aftermath of World War II is that we could defeat a psychopathic enemy and magically reboot their society with the best of intentions and find in that society a new collaborator and some of our closest friends, right? So Germany and Japan are great allies of the United States and the UK now, and have been for as long as we've been alive.
So this is actually optimism, right? The point he's making here is optimistically that, because we were eventually able to, re-educate, re-assimilate those cultures, like those civilizations that do these really, really horrendous things, right? Like just atrocious. And they collaborated in these efforts and yada yada, and we had to, utterly, like we had to do really horrible stuff in order to get them to stop doing really horrible stuff, right? But now we're all friends now.
Given the level of hostility and the clear evil that was present in those societies, that culminated in World War II. Again, they're really not two sides of the story. I mean, in many cases there are two sides of a conflict, but when you're looking at those conflicts, no. I mean, clearly Germany and Japan were in the wrong in how they behaved. And
there's still two sides of the conflict. See, this is a tough one because I agree and I disagree. Your justification is wrong, right? It's like the Civil War. Like this is what I say. Like the abolition of the Constitution is absolutely necessary to even like make sense of society, right? Like now for us, because at the time the Confederacy was in the right? Legalistically, if you're talking about what existed as a matter of law and the agreement that was reached between the states, the Confederacy was correct. Now, morally, they were wrong, right? But the law was also wrong. Wait, no. I'm sorry. The Union, Confederate. Wait, no, that's the same thing. What's the other guy? Right. So the South was legally correct, morally wrong, right? The North, morally correct, legally wrong, right? Technically, they violate their own constitution, right? On one measure to uphold another, and it's ridiculous. It's stupid, and they still won't redraft the fucking document, right? Today, still you just can't do it. Why? Reasons. They're just afraid. So it doesn't actually make sense, but it does, right? Because they're not legally justified, yet everybody can agree that they're morally justified, right? That's the point. Therefore, your laws are immoral and unjust.
Benevolence of our intentions, our ultimate intentions with respect to those societies, were revealed in how we helped rebuild them. Right? I mean, we could have just gone into Germany and started raping and killing everyone in sight if that's what we were about, right? So
I actually like. So I guess you could do a lot of things, like what you ought to do, right? He's trying to say that would have been justified based on their actions to retaliate in kind. And
the lesson I would draw from that is not that it's going to be easy to go into a society like Syria or Iran or anywhere else and rebuild it along those lines, because we've witnessed in Afghanistan and Iraq just how forlorn that project is. For reasons that I do think are still somewhat difficult to understand, but have to do with religious factionalism. But the lesson I think we should draw is that there is no there's no alternative really to unconditional surrender. Right? There's to real defeat, a defeat that isn't whose moral.
No, and that wouldn't. What are you talking? There's no alternative to unconditional surrender. An alternative would be a condition, right? So you're talking about a thing that is unconditional. So yeah, no, but are you trying to demand an unconditional surrender? If so, from whom? In this instance, just Hamas, right? But you're broadly generalizing with radical Islam here, right? Doesn't. So I'm a little confused, right? I think he clearly believes he is stating his case clearly. But in this instance, I have to disagree. I don't think he's being very clear here. I think in some of his other videos he is much more clear. But maybe it's just the line of questioning, or the fact that he's thrown off by this hour-long harangue on Comedy Cellar USA. I'm not sure.
Implications and political implications are truly indelible, right? And one can't lie about what actually happened there. Lie to oneself about what actually happened there. And
it seems clear to me that what this interviewer is trying to do, I don't know the guy's name, the host of the show, right, is actually he's painting this in such a way that he's trying to ask what would appear to be critical questions, but the answers are kind of like already set up, right? Like, it's in the way he phrases the question. You know that there's already a counter argument in mind, and so there's like this expectation that Sam will not be tripped up by these arguments, right? Like you ought to have an answer for this question if you're going to maintain the stance that you're holding, right? But Sam says early on that he actually doesn't have the answers to a lot of these questions, and it's kind of a moral intuition that he's propping his stance up on. And it should be obvious to sane and rational people that his moral intuition is correct.
Demonstrate that with respect to jihadism, everywhere jihadism seeks to flourish.
I agree with you about a larger war kind of being inevitable because, prior to this, and I was looking it up online, there were many articles about Hamas doesn't want an all-out war, Iran doesn't want an all-out war, and there was a kind of reliance on a psychological equation of deterrence. They would never, I know the worst case scenario, but they would never do that because they know what we would do to them.
Right.
And now we know, either because they can't calculate what we would do to them or because they don't care what we would do to them, that they will do it. And now all of a sudden, the rockets in the north have to be viewed differently. What if they push the button and they're all unleashed at the same time? What I worry about is, forget about an atom bomb, just a dirty bomb, just some enriched uranium. Can we really count on it that they can't smuggle that into Gaza? And can we any longer say, no, the Gazans would never bring a dirty bomb into Israel because they know what we would do to them? No, I think we know they would do it. So we can't live. Israel can't live with that threat anymore. And and another issue, of course, is what the communication of weakness and how that will be interpreted throughout the world and embolden enemies. But I think the first part is really it's a tough thing to accept. But Israel
can Israel live with a threat? Sure. Like, it can live with a threat. The threat doesn't do actual damage, right? The thing happens, then there are repercussions, right? You're just saying that we can't risk allowing the thing to happen. Right? If it happens, then we react to it, right? We respond accordingly. But we cannot risk the possibility that it might occur.
Live with the worst case scenarios anymore that it thought it could, because the equation has shown to be false. It's failed. Deterrence won't stop it.
Yeah. Well, a doctrine of martyrdom changes everything. You know, these people are not deterrable along the normal game theoretic rational lines, because death is not a problem, and it's really not a problem, and it's really important that we take these people at their word.
It's always been.
So that is true, and it's true of radical Islam. In reality, though, it's true of Christianity and Judaism at their core, right? All Abrahamic faiths glorify martyrdom in one vein or another. In some sense, they all glorify martyrdom, right? It's only because Islamists at this particular point in history are so willing to commit atrocities, right? And justify them using their religious text, right? But there have been many times in history where Christians have done the same thing, right? So, while I agree this is probably the most immediate threat, right? It's not standalone. That's imprecise to say. It's just that these are the people that are acting on those core values, right? But those core values actually exist amongst all of the faiths. All of these Abrahamic faiths have a similar doctrine.
Hard for me, and I'm sure I speak for most people, to really accept and internalize that it's really not a problem for them. You think it's just bluster or whatever it is, but nobody wants to die. But you seem to be able to understand that, no, they're not just saying it, it's real. It's very hard for me to understand it.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I've been dealing with since September 11, 2001, just the incredulity of ordinary secular people. When you talk about...
Sorry. Okay, 203... Got to take a little bit of break.
A vintage evening, any evening. Pilsner, IPA, or stout without going out. Mixers, mocktails, and more, straight to your door.
Therefore, I think we all have to reject the premises of this inquiry. The moment they conclude, these hearings are sure to find their rightful place in history alongside the ignominious HUAC investigations of the 1950s. One hopes we can all recover quickly from the damage they're doing to the principles of free speech, academic freedom, and advocacy for justice. It falls on all of us to keep fighting power that would silence us, because if we don't, we know where that road leads. Thank you.
I think they were talking about baseball.
It is my sincere and great honor to introduce Representative Ilhan
This
Omar.
guy is Congress members defend free speech on campuses. This is whatever.
Thank you.
In the Middle East, we've got disturbing video of hostages in Gaza. It's just come out. It shows female Israeli soldiers who it's believed are being held by Hamas. It was released by the hostages' families to pressure the Israeli government to make a deal to bring them home now. MTS Tayeb has more on this story.
Israeli protesters had one message for their government: free the hostages. The demonstrations were triggered by the release of a graphic video showing 5 female soldiers in Hamas captivity, made public by their families.
I want the world to know that she's more than a poster.
Sasha Aryev's 19-year-old sister Karina is seen in the video.
A few girls, like in pajamas, blood-covered, terrified, and you just can't imagine, even when they're speaking to them, I don't think the girls realized, because they do not know the language, you are so pretty, you are the girls who will get pregnant.
Hamas has released a trove of October 7th propaganda videos. The families said they were given this edited version from the military that had removed more disturbing scenes.
Why did your family want to release this video to the public?
Because people are forgetting, we have the feeling that it's becoming normal.
Anger is only growing at Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Many Israelis accuse him of blocking a hostage deal in order to prolong the war in Gaza, allegations he denies.
Do you think your Prime Minister is doing enough?
Every day that she's not home, it becomes harder for me not to be disappointed. But if I won't believe, I won't come out from my bed in the morning.
So you have to believe she'll come home?
Yes.
For CBS Mornings, Imtiaz Tayeb, West Jerusalem.
Israel's prime minister would be arrested if he sets foot in Germany. That is if the International Criminal Court goes ahead with its plan to execute an arrest warrant against Netanyahu for what the ICC prosecutor describes as war crimes. A spokesperson for the German chancellor was asked about it and said the German government, quote, would take Netanyahu into custody because, quote, we abide by the law. The comment came after Israel's ambassador to Berlin asked the German government to reject the ICC's proposed arrest warrant. As always, a lot of developments coming in out of the Middle East, so I do want to talk about those. And let's bring in Paul Salem, the CEO and president of the Middle East Institute. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Thank you, Josh. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, first off, want to talk about the situation there in Germany. Is any of that surprising? Is it concerning? And is it possible that other countries there will kind of follow suit?
Well, I mean, I think there are two things to the announcement in Germany. One, certainly Germany has a very specific position towards Israel relating to the history of the Holocaust. It has always been very supportive of Israel, and I would say remains supportive of Israel, equal more or less to what the U.S. position has been for a long time. But at the same time, Germany and France and the nations of Europe that came out of the ruins of World War I and World War II committed to building a Europe built on the rule of law, on agreements, on treaties, on the European Union. So they have a very profound respect for the rule of law. So I think, this situation exemplifies that, a country that's very supportive of Israel, at the same time very supportive of the rule of law, and feeling that it needs to uphold the decisions of courts. I think, we're going through that same struggle in the United States between politics and the rule of law. It's a very interesting development.
And sticking with Netanyahu, he did say on Wednesday that Spain, Ireland, and Norway's plan to recognize a Palestinian state is akin to handing out, quote, a reward for terrorism. What might be the motivation for these nations there to announce this now and really almost simultaneously?
Certainly it seemed to have been coordinated. It's a very significant move, particularly to have Norway part of that. Norway was the host of the Oslo Accords, the attempt 30 years ago to forge peace between Israelis and Palestinians and move towards a two-state solution. Since then, the two-state solution has all but been buried. Yes, the Israeli reaction to this has been, arguing that this is a reward for what Hamas
I
did.
swear to fucking God, and it's like it is like literally every fucking 5 minutes. It's stupid. Shit just pisses me off. It really does. Okay, breathe. Just breathe.
On October 7, but I think the announcement by these three countries, which by the way joins 144 other countries, including the Vatican that had already taken that step in the past, so a vast majority of states in the world, reflects an exasperation that, on the Israeli side as well, there has been no commitment or forward progress towards building the conditions of a two-state solution. And indeed, the mess that Prime Minister Netanyahu finds himself in was partly the result of a long-term strategy which allowed Hamas to be in Gaza, and Netanyahu felt that that was a manageable situation, and it will also prevent any pressure on him for negotiating towards a two-state solution. Most, I think, states are beginning to recognize that this needs a solution, and the only viable solution is working towards a two-state solution. The fact that it came 7 months after the attacks by Hamas on Israeli civilians is unfortunate, but obviously that's not the whole story, and we need to move forward rather than backward.
The Israeli War Cabinet deciding essentially that that Israeli delegation should go back to kind of negotiating a deal that would lead to the...
I think it's some dumb motherfucker out here trying to spin donuts. Oh my gosh, it looks like so much fun! Yo, let's have a second. So fucking over this shit. I really am. No matter what I do, man, the world just keeps getting dumber and dumber.
Release of the remaining hostages, more than 100 that are still there in Gaza, more than 7 months after the attack by Hamas. So what might be, let's say, the motivation there to continue those talks? And are we any closer to a deal than we were, let's say, a month ago, 3 months ago?
Oh.
Deal than we were, let's say, a month ago, 3 months ago.
Well,
Israeli War Cabinet member and former Deputy Prime Minister Benny Gantz, a short time ago delivering an ultimatum to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, telling him the cabinet must agree on a 6-point plan for the Gaza conflict by June 8th. He also threatened to leave the coalition.
No. Stop. Stop what you're doing. Stop it! Stupid fuck.
Now, Hamas is a jihadist organization. In my view, that's all we need to know about it. The question of how it got that way is fundamentally uninteresting, as is the question of why so many Palestinians have come to support it. It would be like asking in 1941 how the SS became so radicalized. And why do so many millions of Germans support it? That's an interesting question now, right now that Nazism has been defeated. But in 1941, there was nothing to do but kill Nazis. I feel exactly the same way about jihadists. In fact, jihadists are worse than Nazis, in my view. They don't have the same power the Nazis had in the 30s and 40s, which is a very good thing, and we should keep it that way. But their ideology is actually worse. Jihadism is essentially Nazism plus an expectation of paradise. It's Nazism plus religious fanaticism. Nazism plus an eagerness to be martyred and to see their children martyred. There are many differences between Nazism and jihadism, of course, but they only make the Nazis look comparatively benign. Nazism was a quasi-religious phenomenon. These people were not rationalists.
Alright, just gonna take note. White SUV. Wrote it down too. Get a picture of that. It's Bridge Patrol just came through. They didn't ask me anything about it.
Now, Hamas is a jihadist organization. In my view, that's all we need to know about it. The question of how it got that way is fundamentally uninteresting, as is the question of why so many Palestinians have come to support it. It would be like asking in 1941 how the SS became so radicalized. And why do so many
No, I mean, you know, it's irrational. It's like, it doesn't actually matter. I mean, you can take the historical circumstances into account, right? But you are where you are historically, and so you just got to deal with the problem that's in front of you. Makes sense. What the fuck is the third time we're gonna do this?
millions of Germans support it? That's an interesting question now, right
I
now.
really have to get my phone fixed, man. This is stupid.
Now that Nazism has been defeated, but in 1941, there was nothing to do but kill Nazis. I feel exactly the same way about jihadists.
He makes it sound like, you know, like Inglourious Bastard or something. Like, I mean, I don't think it was really ever that cut and dry, right? Like, look at the testimonies of, like, people who had to, like, you know, take down the Hitler Youth and shit like that. Like, it was pretty horrible. Like, it wasn't just like, it was killing some Nazis. I mean, sure, you've got some percentage of veterans who are always like that. Doesn't matter what engagement they're in, right? You had those guys in Vietnam too. So, yeah, just that's kind of, it's just a byproduct of the military complex, right? The way it works.
Jihadists are worse than Nazis, in my view. They don't have the same power the Nazis had in the 30s and 40s, which is a very good thing, and we should keep it that way. But their ideology is actually worse.
So this is interesting. Like the way he draws this comparison, say the ideology is worse, they're worse, regardless of the fact that they don't feel the same power, right? They don't have the same numbers concentrated, right? Arguably, they probably have a faster numbers, but spread out over larger geographical areas.
Jihadism is essentially Nazism plus an expectation of paradise. It's Nazism plus religious fanaticism. Nazism plus an eagerness to be martyred and to see their children martyred.
Well, the Nazis were also, I mean, they believed that the ethno-state, like if they could promulgate the ethno-state, then they would also have, like, there would be a greater That dude's 2 hours earlier than usual.
There are many differences between Nazism and jihadism, of course, but they only make the Nazis look comparatively benign. Okay, Nazism was a quasi-religious phenomenon. Right? These people were not rationalists. It was basically racist mysticism anchored to a cult of personality. But the Nazis didn't use their own women and children as human shields. That would have been worse. I mean, how could you have made out?
So, I mean, see, he's accurate and he's inaccurate here. So there was quasi-religious phenomenon going on, right? But they did base, right, a lot of their ideology was based in eugenics, right? So they had some scientific basis, right? It wasn't like there was a cult of personality around Hitler, which is independent from what most Germans believe, like religiously, which is also independent, but they were able to, through propaganda, right, to basically reconcile all of those things, all of those factors. Is it Friday? I feel like it's Friday. But they still kind of believed in martyrdom, right? That's why you had, like conscripting the youngest possible people into military service, because they still kind of had this fundamental belief that it was, this whole greater good theory, right? Like, and that martyring those people, right, would achieve a certain ends, which was effectively paradise on earth, right? The German ethno-state that they were striving for was like heaven on earth. Like, you could compare it to that. It's the same. It's equivocal. The ideology is equivocal.
What's worse? Well, you could have given the guards a belief system that made them feel actual religious ecstasy as they herded innocent people into gas chambers. That would have been worse. And it would have been worse had these beliefs been central to the worldview of a majority of ordinary Germans, and therefore difficult to separate from their other religious beliefs that gave their lives meaning. Right? That would have been worse than what Nazism actually was. And that would have made it harder to purge from German society after we had killed a sufficient number of committed Nazis. Now, as I've made clear many times before, my support for Israel in this conflict is not born of my identity as a Jew. It's not born of my attachment to the religion of Judaism, of which I have none. And while the eruption of global anti-Semitism in response to October 7th has changed my sense of the vulnerability of Jews everywhere, My support for Israel in this war isn't due to a special focus on the problem of anti-Semitism or a special connection to Israel as a country. It's born of a special connection to civilization, to the norms of open societies, to individual rights and freedom of thought, and to secularism and rationality and basic decency. That is, to everything that jihadists seek to destroy. In part behind a paywall. As always, if you appreciate what we're doing here, the way to support the podcast is to subscribe at samharris.org. There are 5 myths about Israel and the war in Gaza that I would like to address. However, there are 2 things I should say at the outset that are important and easy to lose sight of, with the various pseudo-moral hallucinations being spread everywhere, in particular on social media. The first point is that the problem that Israel faces with Hamas, and eventually Hezbollah, and ultimately Iran, while it is existential for Israel and dangerous and difficult in many specific ways, is a variant of a larger problem that has nothing in principle to do with Israel or Jews or American foreign policy. This is a larger clash of cultures. I hesitate to follow Samuel Huntington in calling it a clash of civilizations, because I think real civilization, what we mean by civilization at this point in the 21st century, exists on only one side of this divide. And this clash is happening in varying degrees in 100 countries. In most places, it can be described as a conflict between Islamic extremists, more appropriately called jihadists, and ordinary human beings struggling to maintain the norms of open societies. So while it might sound like I'm narrowly defending Israel here against propagandists for Hamas, I would more or less have the same things to say about any civilized society fighting jihadists. I said the same things about American efforts to eradicate the Islamic State, for instance, in which case I was defending the Yazidis, who were being starved en masse on the side of a mountain, whose men were being crucified and decapitated, and whose women and girls were being taken by the thousands as sex slaves, by jihadists who had come from all over the world to join the so-called caliphate and to bask in the false dawn of Islamic prophecy, seemingly on the brink of fulfillment. And I said the same things after 9/11, when the United States was the target. You can read my book, The End of Faith, on this subject, and you'll find that there's very little mention of Israel there. I think the word appears on maybe a dozen pages. And I'll have the same thing to say the next time so-called terrorists murder innocent people in London or Paris. Again, this problem has nothing in principle to do with Israel or Jews, and I fully expect that civilized people throughout the world, non-Muslim and Muslim, will be fighting jihadists for decades to come. If I live to be 100, I do not expect to live to see the end of this problem. Needless to say, I hope I'm wrong. The second point, and I fear this will be forgotten almost immediately the moment I begin defending Israel, is that there is no ethical or political argument that makes sense of the sight of lifeless children being pulled from rubble. With just a glimpse of the imagery coming out of Gaza, it's only natural to think that any action that could produce such carnage must be evil. It is absolutely natural to feel that since urban warfare guarantees that innocent children will die, violence cannot be the answer, and so Israel should just stop fighting. But this is an illusion. However horrific, even unthinkable, sometimes war is necessary. Of course, many of these strategic and tactical decisions Israel has made in how it wages this war are debatable, but there is no way of waging it without a massive loss of innocent life, as I will discuss. And if you doubt that, what is the alternative to violence for Israel in its current conflict with Hamas, given what Hamas did on October 7th, and given what it has vowed to do again at any opportunity? Pacifism? Pacifism only works against a morally sane adversary. It worked against the British in India. But pacifism would not have worked against the Nazis. Had the Allies decided that war is just too awful, and they just couldn't stomach killing any more German children, we would all be living in the 1,000-year Reich. And if the Israelis practiced pacifism, Hamas and Hezbollah and a fair number of ordinary Palestinians would simply murder them. This is not an opinion. This is what these groups have claimed openly for decades. And if there were any doubt, and there never was any doubt, October 7th has made it obscene to doubt this now. What more do you need? Hamas has said that it will repeat the atrocities of October 7th again and again. And recent polls indicate that 80% of Palestinians approve of what they did. You might worry that Palestinians can't afford to answer such polls honestly, for fear of Hamas. But support for Hamas is around 40% in recent polls. Support for what Hamas did on October 7th is double that. So many of those who had the courage to say they don't support Hamas still approve.
I think we've established trust. They're actually using their snouts to sniff the ground. No, don't come in here. You can't come in. No, you're not a cat. You're a raccoon. Back. Get back. Think it'll bite me? I'll show you what a steel-toed boot to the face looks like. Nuts. No, I give them some walnuts. They're all right. A little too comfortable. Even sneaky. Gave them a bunch of food, so cool. They snuck up on me coming in from the gate just now. That was funny. These little fuckers.
Of what Hamas did on October 7th. The problem for Israel and for the whole world is that jihadism is more dangerous than Nazism. Jihadists are like Nazis. They're not and have their children die because they actually believe in martyrdom. They don't just sort of believe in it. They don't merely hope that it's true. They absolutely believe that dying while attempting to kill infidels or apostates or Jews leads directly to paradise. I understand that this sounds like dehumanizing wartime propaganda, but it isn't. This is fundamentalist religion in its worst form. We are dealing with religious fanatics who have had most rational human goals and considerations scraped from their minds by a lunatic ideology. And while there are differences among jihadist groups, and they can sometimes be found murdering one another, they're all part of the same death cult. Of course, I'm not saying that ordinary nationalism and tribalism aren't also part of the problem. They are. There are many contributors to every conflict. I'm talking about what makes these particular conflicts worse than those born of ordinary nationalism, or tribalism, or competition for resources, or any other earthly motive. The aims of jihadists really are antithetical to everything that civilized people value, and are right to value, in the 21st century. And the fact that we have on our own side rich, educated people who are concerned about gay rights and trans rights and women's rights, who want to fight climate change and save the whales, taking the side of Hamas in the aftermath of the atrocities they committed on October 7th, just reveals how confused and decadent and morally vulnerable our civilization has become. We have to confront the facts that are staring us in the face. And most importantly, the majority of Muslims everywhere need to face these facts.
Sucking on a chili dog outside the Tasty Freeze. Sorry, I'm losing focus here. We're gonna have to come back to this. Clearly my mind is wandering. I blame the raccoons.
Oh my God, David, you are here. How about that stuff? What if I just put the link out there? What is Bimbob?
He's jealous of my voice. He read my comment yesterday and he started to read it in his Ben Shapiro voice because he kind of talks like Ben Shapiro. And then he said, "Oh wait a minute, I need to speak like this because it's got this." I said, "That's right, talk like a man."
Did he manage to read it and get with it?
He read about half of it. I don't think he liked the second half of the comment. There's Scott.
The late Scott Duke.
Straight from Hicksville.
Over there. I was trying YouTube on my TV and went through the features and noticed Paula G to Cameron Marcuzzi and a couple of 12 reasons for the realistic explanation of the Christian story, Christianity. And I was watching it and I made an entire hour and 15 minutes. But doggone if I didn't fall asleep. And so when I came out of my slumber and realized it was just snails with close to 2 o'clock, I thought, there's something I'm supposed to be doing. And then I realized Answers in Atheism was about to air at 2 o'clock. I just knew that I was rushing myself. I like the thumbnail. You've got a good thumbnail going on there.
Yeah, that's morality and biology, basically.
Yeah, I've heard from multiple viewers that thumbnail is like half the attraction. Like, if you have a good thumbnail, you're guaranteed to get at least a few views.
It's kind of menacing. It's like one of those made for children's kind of movies where all the plants in the woods turn against you or something.
Yeah.
It's got this murderous, menacing, yet deceitful look to it.
that happens to me very often when I go out in the woods when I'm on one of my little journeys. So
Yeah, well,
I made
you
that
know,
real.
all the creatures out there really want to kill you if would if they could.
Yeah. Well, not the creatures, the plants. It's the trees, man. You'd be surprised how many trees you can.
I actually just wrote that down in my notebook.
Yeah, with and come up with a demonic
thumbnail is half the attraction.
head that's like 100 feet wide and like 50 feet tall. Oh my God, it's pretty scary. Anyway, I can tell you stories, but okay. So if anybody's confused by my new handle, the degenerate homosexual sack of demon sludge.
Degenerate homosexual sack of demon sludge.
I was so christened by Jim Bob yesterday. That's what he called me. And I thought it was like, oh my God. My son even said he's really good at that insult stuff, you know? He really is. He's not good at much else, but the insult stuff, he did a pretty good job. And he's really good at stuff like this.
That's great. Why the fuck does he keep doing that? It's annoying as shit. It's because of my phone.
It's kind of how I remember him mostly.
Ooh, or false.
Anyway. Yep. So, what do you think of morality as just biology?
It's stupid.
Boys and girls.
Well, this morality is just biology.
Well, I
think
wouldn't say just because that implies reductionism.
Yeah. I think it supervenes on biology.
Yeah, it's based in biology.
Oh, there's comments. Sorry, I have been neglecting the comments for like the better part of 2 hours here. Cher had to go hair dyeing, cookies to bake. I will call you. Okay, and Ginger Nation came by and said Bubas. Bubas.
It extends from the social aspects of creatures, that are social, like different mammals, primates, that kind of strand or tendency. And of course, even I guess that's sociality. Is that mostly mammalian in nature? You have dolphins.
Sociality? No, there's what? Okay, so hold on. I just want to make sure that today is I'm having a tremendous amount of difficulty focusing in on any particular thing right now, right? Like, so this is like generally the whole purpose of me doing this, right? The streaming thing at the particular time I'm doing it right now, right, is like so that I can like concentrate on a thing and kind of distract myself from where I'm at, right? Which is like it's proving ridiculously hard to do at this moment, right? Because I kind of want to have some sense of awareness, it's like is this better than just like going to sleep or something? Like not better, like subjectively is it superior, but like is it like preferable, like actionably is it as opposed to like some other thing I might do that might, you know, risk place me at risk, right? That's the thing, like harm reduction. I don't want it to take the next I'm looking at like the next step that I take, right? It's not I'm not wording this very well, and so I'm kind of having like a large amount of anxiety right now for no particular reason. And so let's just take a second, try to refocus. Okay.
Freezing cold and answer 9 years old.
You the cold man, say I'm freezing cold and answer 9 years old. All right.
Where your guest just had terrible internet.
All right, Chaos. Chaos. Oh, where are you from originally? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in San Pedro, California, and I grew up right next there, Torrance. They call it South Bay.
William, oh, I see Jill here. Hey, people, what's up? Yeah, it's too early in the fucking morning. Just went to see a movie about religious Planet of the Apes. Sort of like you going to see The Passion of the Christ. I never actually saw that movie. Maybe I should revisit that. We'll do a movie review. I think Jim Caviezel is like a Nazi or something. That's what I read.
That's pretty much it.
Tell me about your family. You had mom and dad?
I was the only child. My dad's dead. He died in 2004. And my mom, she's like some ultra militant Christian, so I haven't talked to her in like probably like 15 years.
How would you describe your childhood?
I think it was, I mean, to me, I think it was regular, you know? I was always in trouble when I was a kid, so, you know, I was always real hyper, so I was always military schools, and, you know, and my mom was like pretty strict, so it was like, I don't know, it seemed like there was always like some kind of conflict, you know? And I'd be with my dad on the weekends, and I was like, you know, that was like a vacation for me.
How far did you go to school?
High school, and then I got locked up when I was 15, and pretty much stayed getting locked up till now.
How old are you now?
I'm 48.
48. You been in and out of prison?
In and out of prison. I pretty much went from go to like the most extreme pretty quick. Like in LA County Jail, they had this place called the gang module. It was a white gang module. It was in 3400 Charlie Road, and this is when it was pretty much a death sentence to be in LA County if you're white. And you know, the whites there, you know, I don't know if people know, but we represent about 8% of the prison population, but we're responsible for like 67% of the murders. And, you know, so the politics get real sick, you know. But I started out there, and then some of my homeboys were, you know, mostly they were riders, and that's when I started getting courted into the ride.
So the gang life started early for you?
Started early. I just pretty much went from kind of like a fuck-up kid from Torrance to, like, strung out. Worst of the worst California gang member, you know, domestic terror, all this shit, you know. And ended up doing most of my prison time in the SHU. Pelican Bay, I'm still active today, so like.
SHU is the solitary confinement?
Security housing in Pelican Bay. I've been in Pelican Bay twice, Corcoran and Tehachapi, New Folsom 3, B3. And,
where'd you get exposed to the whole gang scene?
When I first went to county jail when I was young, and back then, if you were white, it was fucked in there. You like, it was like a third world country. It was like we couldn't have all the whites and like would walk around with socks, and it was bad. So the violence was there from the beginning. You know,
say all
like
the whites were walking around with socks. Yeah, sounds about right. This guy kind of strikes you though as like he's not a mark, but he is the type of dude who would probably like, you know, trade drugs for sexual favors, right? Like you could see this dude, like I don't know which end he's on, but
thing is fucking violence. You know what I'm saying? Like,
is it mostly racial?
Oh, for sure. California, even though you see on TV, it's like looks like this, like liberal utopia, but the racism is here in California. You know, and it's real. You know, yeah, but yeah, it's all based on that.
As a member of the white gang, do you have more problem with the Mexicans or with the blacks?
Oh, blacks for sure. You know, Mexicans too, though. You know, but we would get problems with anybody, though. You know what I mean? We're known for being short, but like nobody really wants to fucking extended fucking conflict with us, for sure.
Can you talk about some of the crazy things you've been through in prison? No names.
No names. I can talk about some things, I guess. You know, like what? You gotta give me something to go on from.
Have you had to take care of people that need taken care of?
Yeah. Well, my gang, you have to
Wait,
stab.
he fucking phrased that, kind of like giggled there. He's like, "Have you like taking care of anybody?" What do you mean by taking care of? Of course, taking care of all. No.
Really, what, you know, to make it look good, you have to stab somebody for each letter. So, you know, that's 3 stabbings right there, you know. But yeah, I stabbed an old Folsom, earned my letter and shit.
So just because you stab them doesn't mean that they're dead, right? Like, so.
Got courted into the riot and then made it official. But you never stops after that. You're always doing stuff after that, you know.
Yeah.
Is there a way in prison to not get involved in all that stuff?
Yeah, just like fucking keep your fucking nose down, fucking defend yourself. I mean, as far as everything I can tell, like you're still gonna be a fucking target, but like yeah, like you clearly have the choice to either affiliate or not.
I mean, if you go to prison for,
I mean, if you go for something low and you're on like guard, yeah, but when you start getting like 3s and 4s and even the county jail, like, you don't really have a choice, you know, especially if you're white. Like it's, you know, you're gonna constantly be targeted. Like, you know, if you don't fall within a certain group, then you know, you're pretty much just cannon fodder, you know.
Are you more comfortable in prison or on the street?
And I hate being in prison, dude. Like, you know, and all that time in the shoe, man, I really think it like fucked me up, you know, because, you know, I probably did like 15 years, you know, like straight shoe time, and like it changes you, dude. Like, you know what I mean? It fucking changes you, and you get, you know, acclimated to that, and you hit the streets, and it's fucking weird, dude. You know, it's fucking weird, and you got a huge fucking, you know, grudge about it. You know what I'm saying? Like a huge grudge, you know, and it's hard to just, you know, be whatever normal is. You know what I mean? Like so that's like, you know, you don't want to be in prison, but, you know, then again, it feels familiar, you know, like, okay, I know how to do this, you know what I mean? I might, you know, I don't know how to do it, but, you know, I know how to do this, you know? You know, it's fucked up, but it's true, you know? 1998, I had a homeboy of mine, like, he's a pretty famous dude from South Bay. His name was Ricky Thorpe, and that was my fucking boy, and I was only like 21, 22. I just got into the fucking ride.
Ben Thorpe.
You know, and he was a rider. All my homeboy, you know, when I say rider, I mean Nazi low rider. They were Nazi low riders and shit, you know? And, you know, back then it was fucking cool to be Nazi low rider. Like, our shit was, I still think it is, but
You
people
say
talk a lot of shit about my
Nazi
game.
low
But,
riders? Oh, no. Yeah. All right, so I hadn't watched this like too deeply. So he's with Nazi low riders, which is they're one of those fucking cliques that just, I don't know. I've never heard from my experience, right? And I've never done time, but anybody that I know that has done time, yeah, they talk mad shit about these guys. They're a bunch of fucking punks.
in the back of their mind, they know not the rides of shit. You know what I mean? And but yeah, he Ryan, I looked up to him. I pretty much got in the right because them cats. And anyway, he had a little disagreement with this girlfriend of his, and the dude that was involved in it was like, you know, he was somebody more than us, you know. And he ended up like our shit was. I still think it is, but people talk a lot of shit about my game. But in the back of their mind, they know not the rides of shit. You know what I mean? And but yeah, he Ryan, I looked up to him. I pretty much got in the right because them cats. And anyway, he had a little disagreement with this girlfriend of his, and the dude that was involved in it was like, you know, he was somebody more than us, you know. And he ended up putting a shotgun to this dude's chin. The fucking cop seen it. He left the gun. The guy got busted. So now my homeboy's like, dude, if I go back, I'm gonna get struck out. If I do go back, they're gonna fucking kill me for getting this guy busted. And so, you know, and he's like, you know, so if we get pulled over, I'm gonna hold court in the street. All right, cool. And we're drinking. The same people say shit when they're drinking, so, you know, I didn't think nothing of it. But the next day we were driving down the street going to play ping pong of all things, and Torrance PD fucking they got behind us and pulled us over, and right here on like Sepulveda and Arlington. And as soon as they opened the door, my homeboy got out and just fucking fired on these fucking cops, dude. And he fucked them up because they kept trying to do these little cop holds and grabs and shit. And my homeboy boom, 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 boom. And but then he went for it. He had a shit on his back, and the cops have it on their side, so they're faster, you know. And he tried to go for it, and as soon as I seen it, I was like in this little mini blaze in the back, and, you know, I hit the deck, and then like probably about 30 shots. And I look up, and my homie was on the ground. He had one in his forehead. He was doing, you know, this whole thing. The cops ran, hid behind their car, and yeah, they fucking aired my homeboy out. Dog. He did just what he said. You know, he was gonna hold court in the street. But then after that, you know, in the news and the newspapers, they said, you know, 2 Nazi lowriders tried to attack the cops and 1 got killed. So at that point in my career, like.
The great beyond, the infinite darkness of the universe.
At that point in my career, like, you know, as far as like heat from the government was insane, you know. So like I was always that, you know, like I lived twice my life. I couldn't go to that city at all, even if I couldn't pass Western, you know, and you know, and it also got me a lot of attention with, you know, IGI gang cops and shit like that. So yeah, it was just a constant, like they're just trying to give you life, you know, constantly trying to get me with something to remove me from the streets, you know. Didn't matter if I was doing good. I had 30 tests and 18 with these dudes. Once you're a target for the government, they'll never fucking let you go, dude. Never. And it don't matter if you're doing good or whatever. So I mean, to me, I think I'm just gonna be me, dude. I'm a fucking criminal, fucking gang member. I'm an enemy of the system, and fucking and that's what I do good, and that's what I'm gonna do, you know. So you know,
I'm a jihadist.
Doctors that would notice the signs that the children are being neglected or abused.
System so much as other people. So when it says, oh, it needs to be this, like I said, you know, I had a doctor was mutant and used a head-shaping helmet. I was told that she was underweight, fraudulently. I know how they work, and I know they're in business, and that healthy people don't make them any money.
So that kind of skewed your...
Yeah, it skewed the way, it does, it changes the way that we do things a lot differently than most other people.
But looking at your daughter, looking back, you as a parent, as a father, didn't you have any... So it's okay, and this has been going on for some time. That's what I'm asking. At what point, you knowing what you know today, if you could go back and reset the clock to try to prevent today, how far back do you think you would go?
I don't know, because I can't tell you. You know, maybe the first mention somebody had that I respected, that she was too skinny. That she was too
How
thin.
long ago was that?
I don't know. Like I said, she's been skinny since she was born.
So what? How many people that you respected have told you that?
My mom and...
He may not have realized it, but Welch has just admitted that multiple trustworthy people had told him that there was something wrong with his daughter. He had knowledge that there was a problem and chose to ignore it.
Just to reiterate, this fat fucking piece of shit American starved his baby to death. Yeah, so that's this fucking piece of shit.
How was your dad? You probably think your dad's dad in your mom's plate?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So today, at what point today did you and or Tatiana think this doesn't look good? The size of her, all of this doesn't look good.
Today?
Yeah.
Well, we didn't. We kind of like woke up and she was dead. So.
No, but I mean after that, when you were thinking that this is like, as far as it doesn't look good that we didn't get her the medical treatment or whatever. At what point today did you think that?
I don't know. I guess I haven't really worried about it too much.
Okay. Did mom feel concerned because of she knew the weight was so low, or what was your discussion like with her about that?
Yeah, she just mentioned that she's skinny.
Okay.
But what, you know, the thing is that it's like, yeah, she was skinny, but that would be like the only thing. It's like, okay, she's not skinny, then she'd be fat. And it's just like, you know, everybody's always got something to nitpick about a baby kind of thing.
No, you're right about that. But Seth, there is a difference, and I have pictures. There's a difference between
you're a fat,
no, I know
reprehensible piece of shit.
She was thin.
Who's gonna?
Yes, I know. I picked her
your, like, oh my fucking god! Like the dude's like fucking trying to justify that his baby might have been fucking fat. Are you fucking kidding me right now?
I know how skinny she was. It used to hurt.
Fucking asshole.
What am I gonna do? Like inject her with liposuction? And what are the doctors gonna do?
But because here's the thing.
There's more. You know what the leading cause of death in this country is, don't you? Yeah, it's medical malpractice.
It is. I'll give you that.
It's more dangerous. It's more dangerous to take your kid to the doctor than illegal
It's actually obesity. You dumb fuck.
I don't know cops, but
I get what you're saying.
So there you go.
No, I get what you're saying because there's some stats that go along with some of this. But here's what I'm saying, though, is on this case, when we know, because I know you guys are doing what you're saying you're doing. I know you're feeding them protein. We can see it. We're not dumb either. We can look around and say, these guys are piling food in this girl. So when that's not working,
wait, no.
then we know there's something. There's Crohn's.
Obesity is one. I actually have to like leading cause of death. It's definitely not fucking malpractice. Might be cancer. It's like, I'm pretty sure it's either cancer or fucking something related to fucking obesity, fucking diabetes or something. Diabetes is definitely not it, but. Did I mention that I was... Heart disease. There you go. See, I knew it was something like this. Related to what? How the fuck do you get heart disease? Like, you can get heart disease a bunch of ways, but like, obviously, like being overweight, like, drastically being overweight and smoking, right? So I think all that shit. I knew it had something to do with, yeah. Fucking prick.
Crohn's disease or diabetes, there is a disease that has to be. That's not allowing this girl to absorb the nutrients for these foods, and you know that.
Yeah, you're correct. I do know that. I guess I just never thought of it. There's no family history. Like I said recently, regardless of what the people who've been around her for 10 months, commented, we all noticed that she was getting bigger. So I was just like, oh, finally, okay, we're through that stage. I was worried for a little bit there, but she's putting on the weight now. She's clearly getting heavier. So I kind of thought we were through it.
Let me ask you an honest answer. Do you feel responsible in any way for what happened today?
Secular people, when you talk about the psychological and spiritual confession one hears on the part of jihadists. Again, there are many versions of it, but one phrase is, "We love death more than the infidels love life." Right? That's not bluster, right? It's not. And what's amazing to me, it's amazed me for now, a quarter of a century, is that even a suicide bombing on the part of someone who had lots of reasons to live, right? Not a desperately depressed person, but somebody who had other opportunities in life, and you can read their backstory, and they had a wife, and they had a family, and they had economic prospects, and nonetheless, they decided that the fulfillment of their whole life project was best accomplished by strapping on some explosives and blowing themselves up on a bus, or flying a plane into a building, or whatever it was. What's is that rhetorical flourish, like, here, you want to see how much I believe what I just said? Watch this, bam, isn't enough for secular liberal types who just can't get their minds around the fact that someone really believes in paradise in this world. But millions of people really believe in paradise, and it's a profoundly dehumanizing set of beliefs that leads them to this particular notion of martyrdom and the kinds of sacrifices that it's rational to make, and would be irrational not to make if you really believe these things. I mean, martyrdom is the only direct way to go straight to paradise, bypassing the day of judgment. It's the only guaranteed way to save yourself. I mean, it's the ultimate career opportunity if you believe these things. And so we have to and we need to figure out other ways to bracket it and undermine it, theologically. And that work, that's for the Muslim scholars to do. I mean, unfortunately, the tools they have at their disposal are perilously thin. The doctrine is pretty damn clear, in the texts, and so good luck with that, guys. But in the meantime, we need to kill jihadists. I mean, I see absolutely no alternative to that. And so the idea that Israel
need to kill jihadists. I don't know who we are. Sam Harris does not necessarily represent my views. I'm just saying. But he, he's made some good points there. That's fine. I can concede. Like, it's very dangerous belief. We have to attack these ideas. Just blow them off the face of the earth. Oh, sorry.
In perpetuity, just trying to figure out how to build a taller fence. I just don't see how that works. Again, as you point out, given the increasing spread of destructive technology, I mean, it's getting easier for small numbers of people to destroy the lives of much larger numbers of people. It's not getting harder, right? And defense, unfortunately, the asymmetry here is, I think, always going to be present, which is it's easier to break things than to fix them. It's easier to play offense than defense. And yeah, I mean, the one thing you can put some story in is,
speaking of which, I need to get
not
back
the
to my
humanity of jihadists, but
soon.
their powerful attachment to religious symbols.
I have puzzles to do. It's after 3 o'clock in the morning. Fuck.
So, for instance, I would be very surprised if a jihadist group was willing to do anything that might harm the Al-Aqsa Mosque, right? Like, that would be really counterproductive. They're not going to target the mosque. They're not going to blow, they're not going to blow it up. They're not going to cover it with radiation and make it, uninhabitable for 10,000 years, right? So, I think you're very safe if you're close to the mosque, right? On some level, those are the kinds of verities that you can put some stock in, because things like mosques are things that these people really care about, far more than they care about the lives of their children.
I just am going to get off it, but to add to this pessimistic picture, it just occurs to me, you can compare it to Nazism, but Nazism was not a supernatural belief. It was a practical ideology that proved itself a failure, so people could walk away from it in a relatively easily, right? As opposed to...
Brandon just released a new video. Big cuts, no new taxes. Governor Newsom's plan to fix California budget deficit. This is from, it's not showing, okay, that's the article. Okay, that's by Alexei Kosov. Faced with ongoing weaknesses in state finances, Governor Gavin Newsom put forward a revised budget plan Friday that he said aims to stabilize California in the longer term by addressing a sizable deficit estimated at $56 billion over the next 2 fiscal years. Looking beyond the typical annual budget cycle, Newsom proposed more than $30 billion in outgoing and one-time spending cuts, including education and climate objectives that have been among the governor's own priorities. Though he promised that core programs providing social services to needy Californians would be mostly untouched. Quote, these propositions that I've long advanced, many of them, these are things that I've supported, end quote. Yeah, that was the quote. But you've got to do it. We have to be responsible. We have to be accountable. We have to balance the budget, end quote. That was the best. Sorry, excuse me. The governor's proposal is an opening officer to the legislature, which faces a June 15th deadline to pass a balanced budget or forgo its pay. That leaves little more than a month for members to sort through Newsom's solutions and negotiate a compromise that reflects their own concerns, and what is certain to be a fever pitch of lobbying from outside groups hoping to stave off cuts in their preferred programs. Governor Newsom proposes cuts to spending on homelessness and housing. From California Black Media, California Governor Gavin Newsom plans to spend less on solving the homeless crisis to help manage the state's budget deficit. Quote, I know that may not sit well with some, but we're struggling with seeing the performance I want to see on the streets, he said, end quote. End quote, he said, whatever the fuck. Governor Newsom wants to cut bonuses worth $260 million meant to fund cities and counties over the next 2 years. Cities and counties were required to submit 2 state approval plans that reduced homeless populations and produced housing for residents. However, the governor has paused plans to pour money into addressing homelessness and the housing crisis since cities and counties failed to track spending or produce credible data on the impact of housing programs statewide. Last year, the state spent $1 billion on housing programs, including the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Program. However, city mayors argued that funds were inadequate and programs were at risk of failing. Fuck, not again. Mayors from 13 of the state's largest cities went to Sacramento last week to urge the governor to provide a permanent source of funds for housing programs. Sharon Rappert, director of California State Policy for the Corporation for Supportive Housing, said the result of the cuts the governor is proposing could be dire. Quote, there are some shelters that will close as a result of no additional funding in this year's budget, end quote. Governor Newsom also proposes cutting the multifamily housing program and grant funding for a local homelessness policy. The fuck?
To Islam, or this radical Islam, which comes with a supernatural stamp of approval, and any sort of failure is not proof of its failure, right? It's just tribulations along the way. So how do you convince somebody?
Up to a point.
You know?
Up to a point. So Nazism really was a kind of mysticism of race, in a sense. I mean, it was more religious than people give it credit for. I mean, people often describe the Nazis as atheists, but no, I mean, they were, the quasi-Christian fanatics.
So right here, he's actually contradicting the statement he made earlier that we were listening to, and he was like, well, it's not blah, blah, blah. It's actually more religious than people give it credit for. But this is a contradiction from what we just heard from him earlier. So, I mean, which is it? What do you actually think, Sam? Tell us how you really feel.
Seattle lunatics and meth addicts, and I mean, they were not a rational group of people, and they're
lunatics and meth addicts.
They created a new kind of religion around notions of blood and soil, and pollutions of race and etc.
Is he talking? He's talking about like Hitler and the elite within Hitler's inner circle. Because Hitler was definitely a speed
cultic phenomenon, not otherworldly in any kind of normal religious sense, but still not quite rational and somewhat mystical and weird. So I take your point. I think it's harder to walk away from the core tenets of Islam.
I just threw my
they have to be
away.
recontextualized. I think at a minimum, all of the people who could be prone to becoming Islamists and jihadists need to be convinced that, well, if Islam is ultimately going to triumph, it's probably no time soon, and it's quite rational in the meantime, in the intervening centuries, to live like peaceful, sane individuals who are enjoying orderly lives.
You can sell this $5 spatula on Amazon and compete with hundreds of other spatula sellers, or you can sell digital products on Amazon and compete with almost no one. You see, I use a brand new Amazon platform that's banned the sale of physical products. Yet without me buying or shipping inventory or storing anything, Amazon's still paying me over $40K a month. You see, everything I sell is 100% digital, so the products live on my computer or laptop. And the crazy part is, I didn't create this system. Carla taught me this. Carla, why don't you tell them more about it?
I'm going to show you a way to potentially make money by pairing Amazon with the power of AI without ever selling physical products. And I promise you've never heard about this before. I just created some simple digital products. Then I put them up on Amazon, and it was so exciting. The first time I tried it, I made $14, and I was like, oh my goodness, this actually works. Hi, I'm Carla Marie, and the coolest part is Amazon puts over 300 million customers just a click away. So age, experience, qualifications, none of it matters. I want to share my full system with you, but obviously this is an ad, so I'm hosting a free...
You're going to have to get used to asking questions that might make you a little bit uncomfortable.
Okay.
In peace with their neighbors, in the meantime. And maybe it's all going to be about claiming the world for the one true God ultimately, but it's not rational for any present generation to spend most of their time fixated on that when life is getting better and better for everyone. Life is now so good, let's say, in 10 years or 100, that no one's impatient for paradise, right? And no one's, and the people who are really committed to just throwing over everything in favor of, a new caliphate, they begin to look, they're immediately recognized as the deranged cultists and malcontents and weirdos that they are, and they're either
fucking
forced
weirdos
to reform, or they're some of their co-religionists deal with them, right? It's just what do you do? I mean, there has to be some process. I don't know, it has to be. Maybe there doesn't have to be, but it seems reasonable that there would be some process analogous to what happened to Christianity since the 14th century, which can truly mitigate the fanaticism that we see in the Muslim world, right? I mean, what's so damaging now is that even mainstream Muslims who have no real connection to jihadism, they're so slow to condemn it. They're so slow to basically they can be counted upon to take the side of Muslims in any conflict with non-Muslims, no matter how sociopathic the behavior of the Muslims, right? That formula has to break down, right? I mean, what we need are 2 billion Muslims who will get out of their own identity politics and recognize that they have a stake in a pluralistic world wherein your identity doesn't trump your moral sanity, right? And if you have, I can tell you that as a Jew, if there was a group of fanatical Jews who were the equivalent of Hamas or the equivalent of the Islamic State, I would condemn them as fully as I've ever condemned Hamas or the Islamic State, right? I mean, there'd be no part of me as my identity as a Jew where I'd say, oh, well, I got to sort of take the Jewish side in that crazy, in these suicidal atrocities that I just saw committed, No, it's just like identity politics is poison, right? And religious identities are poison. I mean, they prevent sane thinking in moral terms, reliably prevent it. So, but to come back to your question, there has to be some process where we're not routinely dealing with the Christians of the 14th century anymore, right? I mean, Christianity suffered repeated centuries of collision with modernity and scientific reasoning and secular politics and capitalism and pluralistic democracies, and it just got beaten into submission in most respects. Now, not to say you can't find totally crazy Christians who want to kill homosexuals, etc., but you tend to find them in sub-Saharan Africa, right? You're not mostly finding them in the West. And yes, there are pockets, there are fanatical Christian cults, but again, they're just fanatical cults that no one has to really worry about much.
Racist.
By comparison,
he's racist and he's a Nazi apologist.
I fear that the process might be the discredited one, was the idea.
I don't know where that came from.
Actually, more so, in my opinion, than weapons of mass destruction behind the war in Iraq, which is bring in an open society with free speech and rule of law and prosperity. And that would be the antidote to this sort of thing, as it seems to be the antidote when Muslim people come to America. And their intensity, which seems to fade away within the atmosphere of a free and open society, which was our aim. It's discredited. I don't think we'll be trying that again anytime soon. But I wonder if that's really not the only thing that might have a chance of working. Anyway, let's talk about identity politics. Sure. So what now you tell me if this is wrong. I think you've devoted your life, the last 15 years, against the scourge of identity politics more than any other issue that's motivated you. The only other issue I've seen you that bent out of shape about has been Trump. But here's the rub. And I was, just for the record, I was very much against Trump. Not really for the reasons of his character and line.
Is Trump really an issue? Trump is a... Trumpism is an issue. But Trump himself is not, like, the issue.
Matter to you a great deal.
Trump is just like a representation of, like, an amalgamation of various issues that we face as a society, I guess. I don't know. It's a societal issue or some... I don't know, there's something going on there.
But mostly because he was unhinged and erratic and couldn't act in his own self-interest. And if we had a crisis, this was not the kind of guy we want in charge of it. And we sort of saw that during COVID.
I would put that under character. I mean, I think that's
okay.
Those are the character traits.
So I think that was a good criteria there. Like, he acts against his own self-interest. I think a lot of us can relate to that, yeah.
that most worry me. Yes.
Yeah, that particular character. But, and COVID, we almost saw this disaster, although I was even a little bit wrong. I think in the end, his mismanagement of COVID didn't matter nearly as much as I thought it was going to. But I wouldn't want Trump handling Ukraine and Israel at the same time in Malibu. I can't imagine. However, in retrospect, I think that Supreme Court decision, which ended racial preferences in university admissions, both legally and in the atmosphere,
Ukraine and Israel, I wouldn't want Trump handling both of his own testicles at the same time. I'm amazed that guy can get out of bed and put on his fucking loafers in the morning.
The blood supply to identity politics, which will now begin to wither and die, to mix an analogy. And the counterfactual would have been a Democratic, a left-wing Supreme Court, which would have taken these cases and guaranteed identity politics for the next 50 years. So in retrospect, would you be willing to entertain the idea that it wasn't worth the risk prospectively, but retroactively, a tougher call?
I guess that's really like...
Yeah, well, I share your
shit again.
satisfaction that
Stop fucking
identity
with me,
politics has been
stupid fucking piece of shit.
curtailed in some
fucking
ways. I think the
bastard.
biggest...
Shut up. You shut up. I'm talking now. Sorry. It's shtick. It's a fucking game, people. I forgot my own fucking point. Never mind. It doesn't matter that much, I guess. I just had to interrupt Sam arbitrarily for no reason at all.
Defeat really is just what's happened optically after October 7th. I mean, those hearings before Congress with the university presidents. I mean, I just think the whole DEI...
So it's amazing because, because you have to question your own competency at this point, right? Like, I mean, look at the people who are in power. Imagine all the things you have to deal with on a daily basis as a president or, a congressperson or something like the sheer volume of work. The thing is, though, and this is key, in a lot of these positions, right, government positions, you're not actually going to be necessarily, there's not going to be repercussions for incompetency, right? It doesn't matter whether you actually do your job and accomplish anything or not, right? It's a fucking popularity contest. As long as you can remain popular, your actual performance means nothing. This fucking bullshit. Right? Now, up until this point, I was like, yeah, I voted for Newsom. Great. I voted against the recall. Great. Now I gotta read this fucking shit, right? And all of a sudden, it's all for naught. The man backpedaled, did the opposite of the thing I voted for him to do, and it's, what was the fucking point of it? This is not going to be the thing, right? That breaks. Oh my. If you can't fucking do the thing, right? If you can't accomplish the goal that we hired you to accomplish, right? If you can't do the job that we hired you to fucking do, then you're fired, right? In any other fucking business, That's the name of the game, right? But not in politics. In politics, you can continue to just not do the job you were hired to do and just keep okey-doking people and keep skating by. It's no big thing. No big thing. Par for the course. Politicians just lie and lie and lie some more, and they still get paid, and they never get the fucking job done. And it's a bunch of bullshit.
My regime is crumbling, and barring, but here the irony comes swinging back. Barring the re-election of Trump, will crumble. If we get Trump again in November, I think the pendulum of sanity now swings back out into full identitarian moral panic on the left, and we'll deal with it.
Not legally sanctioned anymore. Not legally sanctioned anymore. We're not going to see any more COVID and suggesting give it only to black people or disaster relief only for people of color, and that's done.
Right. But I do think yeah. I mean, I think that's all helpful, but I worry that we will just see more accusations of racism, etc., everywhere all the time, as long as Trump is president, right? And all of the derangement that brings. But short of Trump being reelected, I'm hopeful that we have witnessed peak woke, and that the pendulum is swinging back, and that we will have ultimately we will have more normal institutions and more normal politics and more normal media.
I don't know what the fuck that means anymore. I don't know what you mean by normal, man. What is fucking normal? Please describe normalcy for me. Be specific.
And we'll look back on everything that happened on the left as a kind of moral panic, right? Over the last decade, because I think it was, right. I mean, we just to remind people. I mean, we have, because we've all been grown kind of to the shrieking of the present. But I mean, for the last decade or so, left of center in our politics and in all of our institutions. I mean, the most elite institutions: academia, science, Hollywood, the media. Everyone has been acting like not only have we made no progress on issues of race in particular, but this is one of the most dire moments in our history. Like this is the emergency is at 11. Right now, we're living in an intolerably racist society. This is after we had a two-term black president. After all the obvious gains that have been made, and after a DEI regime that was instantiated such that it was true to say.
So I think this is where Sam's off base, like really, really off base right here. Because not understanding that it's not a matter of like the emergency is at 11, right? That's one way of stating the fact that, okay, if we've made this much progress and people say, okay, this is kind of as far as it goes. Like electing Obama, okay, that's fine. Then but the repercussion of that, right, is that you end up with a Trump. And then following that, you get Biden. Biden is kind of just status quo. It's more of the same, right? So progress is advanced, a millimeter, right? And then you take a foot backward in the other direction. That is the fear. That's what you're not understanding. The fear is that any, inch of progress we've made gets walked back a mile, right? That's the fear. That's why people are up in arms. Because like just when it seems like something is happening, like real revolution is taking place, oh no, let's just pull that walk that whole thing back, right? Like, oh no, we can't actually have revolution. Do you know that revolution entails bloodshed? V-Spot, good to see you. Good morning.
That in almost any high status job or school or any other perch one could seek in our society, it would be an advantage to be black, not a disadvantage, right? I mean, looking at applicants of similar qualifications, right? You would absolutely want to be black applying for that job at the Carnegie Foundation or that place.
I wish I was black.
In Harvard Medical School or wherever. I mean, it's just been a malignant fantasy to suggest otherwise for years, right? But
I'm sorry, was it too far?
But I I do think that DEI has gone too far. I mean, I understand and I share the moral and political impulse to redress the obvious wrongs of the past somehow, right? And the obvious wrongs of the past have a are still with us, right? In economic terms, I mean, just look at the disparities in wealth between white and black families on average in this country, right? Surely, racism and racist policies account for that disparity to some degree. But the question is, what to do about that now? What do we do going forward to create a truly just society? And
I think the answer to that is clearly that we continue to do exactly the same thing we've been doing, right? Because change is scary, and fear is what makes people act irrational, right? So keeping things the same, even if they're fucked, right? At least people will kind of behave in a predictable way. And we won't have to be concerned with, like the uncertainty of what happens when you actually, implement, real change in society. Nobody has to worry about that.
And I think for a long time it's been obvious that it can't be. To institute a whole set of racist policies aimed in the other direction, right? Where we're now racist against Asians or white people, or it's obscene, right? It's understandable that we've made these mistakes, but it is, when you look at the details, obscene and obviously unfair and obviously counterproductive, and we're still, and this is truly ironic, conducive to producing more racism, right? I mean, the nightmare scenario is really that you go to a hospital with some emergency, and the doctor walks in, and he or she is black, and your first thought is, I'm now in the presence of a doctor or a surgeon who is less qualified than most, because I happen to know that the standards of admission to medical school and the standards of promotion through the apparatus of a hospital have been systematically reduced for African Americans for years and years, for as long as this person could have possibly been educated. That is fucking awful to have to think about, right? And that's racism, but it's given the nature of the policies, unfortunately, those are completely rational thoughts, right?
All right, yeah, he's no longer hot stove Sam Harris. He's now foot in mouth Sam Harris, for sure. It's wicked, man. It's wicked.
Recordings just got better. Hey, it's Dana from StreamYard. I'm so excited to announce that local recording.
Hi, I'm Paul. He is Yojin. And welcome to a 1-minute English live stream. A little bit aggressive right now, so I don't want to upset him, but really, he's very excited. And now he's looking at me extremely aggressively, and I'm a little bit scared. But I'm going to continue anyway and hope that he doesn't attack me. Good God, what are you doing? Yoshin, we're really gonna have to start. Yeah, what are you doing? Yoshin, can you maybe go somewhere else for a little bit? I'm just gonna turn this round a bit because he's looking at me very aggressively. So I'll sit. Jesus Christ! Oh my God. Okay. So that happened. I don't know what to say. Normally we get on so well.
Your attitude is such.
Don't interfere any further, otherwise you are going to jail. Can I talk, or are you going to keep talking over me?
No, because you've been talking the entire time I've been with you.
What's up, man?
She was in the house, and she came out, and they could smell, like, Listerine on her breath.
Okay.
So when we pulled up, we tried to start talking to her. Her boyfriend's over there in the lime green.
Okay.
He, like, hurried up and grabbed her and took her inside the house.
Okay. What was the time frame from the crash by the time you guys got here?
5 minutes. Probably.
About 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Where's the passenger that was in the car?
So there was no passenger in her car. It was just her. She's leaning on the other side of this Tundra right here.
Okay.
She's unsteady on her feet.
Who's the one that said she was in the car?
She said she was in the car, and then there was another guy here that took off right after I talked to her.
Hello. You okay from the accident?
I'm okay.
You're okay? All right. Can you kind of give me an idea of what happened?
So my mom was going from here, and then the blue car was like gonna go like that way.
Okay. Like out of the driveway?
Yeah, like so it would go like that.
Okay.
And my mom was going straight.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, they just hit into the driveway.
Okay. So your mom was driving this car?
Yes.
Who was driving that car?
I think that girl right there.
Okay.
On her phone.
You sure?
Pretty sure that she was driving the car.
Okay.
And then the two men came out to go check.
To check on her, see if she was okay.
Yeah. Okay. All they heard was a big boom.
Mom's okay?
I think
Okay.
her neck.
She said she was having some neck pain or something like that. Okay, yeah, they'll go check her out. Okay. All right, thank you. Hello. What happened with the accident?
I'm not sure. I pull out of my neighbor's driveway every
Okay.
day.
Yeah.
I always go to take a left to go to 7-Eleven, get some food. That's it. I just didn't see the car. It was a collision. It's unfortunate.
Yes, I mean, it's called an accident for a reason, right? It's not on purpose. Okay. What I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to ask you to walk over here in front of my vehicle with me. Okay, we're just going to talk a little bit further over there, okay? All right, so the reason why they called me out, okay, the initial officer who came up and started talking with you thinks he might have seen a few signs of impairment with you, all right? So why I'm out here is I am here to make sure that you were good to drive at the time of the accident, okay? So understanding that you were involved in an accident, what I got to let you know, okay, the officers over there, they're doing what's called a civil crash investigation, all right? What I'm doing is I'm beginning a criminal DUI investigation, all right? Before I do anything else, I do have to read your rights, okay? Not under arrest, but I have to do this part first, okay? All right, so you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Do you understand your rights?
I do understand my rights.
Okay.
I'm just wondering how it escalated to this point because.
And so there's a reason they have to read you your rights at this point. Actually, I wasn't planning on doing this morning, but I did. I was thinking about this earlier, and I was like, okay, and that's why like any DUI attorney is going to tell you, right off the bat, like if you were in this situation, you immediately decline to speak to the officer. Like he clearly stated, right now he's conducting a separate investigation, right? And this is the point where you say, okay, I'm going to just shut my mouth, talk to an attorney, and they're automatically going to take you to jail. And you know this right off the bat. If there's an investigation, this is what's going to happen. It really doesn't matter how you plead your case at this point under these circumstances, right? Just shut the fuck up and take the jail time.
I was going to take a left. Sure. And we collided, but why did it come to this?
Because, like I just said, what do you do for work?
Why is that relevant?
Because it asked me to ask you what you do for work.
Yeah, I just don't really feel like that's relevant.
Okay, sure. The vehicle over there, the blue one, is that your car?
That's registered to me. I'm a little bit confused.
Sure, why are you confused?
Why we're going through all this when I was just trying.
So, like I explained the first time and the second time, okay? The reason why we're going through all of this is because the initial officer believes that he's seen some signs of impairment with you. Why he called me out here is to ensure that you were good to be driving at the time of the accident.
Okay, I get that, but
what's
he
confusing
didn't
about
say anything because he didn't say anything to me. He didn't ask me or question me or anything.
Okay.
It just kind of happened. I do the same thing every time I go to 7-Eleven.
Okay, well this time...
I hate that shit. I fucking hate that shit. Okay. So, alright, I'm trying to get back into the video. This is really hard to focus right now.
I get food. I get.
So if
Okay.
ever you're like in this situation, right, it doesn't matter. If you, whether or not you are impaired, really doesn't fucking matter. Just stop arguing, right? Like, under these circumstances, you're going to fucking go in. You're gonna get booked, right? Like, your best option is to shut the fuck up.
I understand that things happen.
They do.
I
So why are you
literally,
confused about how we got here?
because collisions happen
They
and
do.
we can deal with it by insurance, but I always go to the 7-Eleven to get milk and food and things like that.
Sure.
So we collided.
Yeah.
Everything like that happened.
Yeah.
So my issue is, why is it's been being like, we have
Why is it
both
getting
guys
to this
here.
point?
Yeah.
Because the initial officer thinks he saw a
But
few
he
signs of
didn't- he
impairment
did not talk
with
to me
you.
or tell me to
and
do
that's not something that
anything.
he has to do. That's why he asked me to come out and speak with you.
Okay, I get that. That's fine.
Okay.
I understand.
Are we on the same page now?
We're on the
That's
same
why we're going
page.
through all of this. So I'm going to go back to the initial questions that I first asked you, okay? Because I've seen a few signs of impairment with you, I want to make sure that you were good to drive at the time of the accident, okay? Is it okay if I take a look at your eyes? It's a yes or no.
I guess.
What
yeah.
I'm trying to do is I'm trying to afford you every opportunity to show me that you were good at the time of the accident. That's why we go through all of this, okay? At the end, every time I come out and I talk to somebody about this, all I do is DUIs. And whenever I come out and I talk to somebody about this, my hope and my intent at the end of it is to say, hey, you know what? I don't think, whatever it was that we were seeing, I don't think it's something that was actually impairing somebody. We're done and over with. It's a simple crash, like you just explained. That's my hope every time I start my case. That's why I'm asking you to go through a few
And
things, okay?
again, it's important to remember that there is no law against police lying to you, right? He is telling a blatant lie, right? He already believes there's signs of impairment. Otherwise, he wouldn't. It has nothing to do with the other officers. I mean, he may legitimately come out because the other officers, made this statement, right? And he's conducting a separate investigation. But his investigation has to be independent of the other officer. You can say, "Oh, I'm verifying this thing," right? Like, but he can't use that officer. Like, that officer is just a corroborator, right? So he's already witnessing the same thing. Otherwise, he wouldn't be administering the test, right? But there's no law against them for lying to you, right? And in fact, it's a common tactic for police to use deception, right? That's why you have like good cop, bad cop. Like, one cop's going to throw the book at you, the other one's going to play nice. That's one of the things they do.
Okay. So you said it's okay if I take a look at your eyes?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to have you face away from my car. Okay. What I'm going to do, I'm going to have you put your feet together. Try not to, don't lean up against the car, okay? Feet together. Okay. Arms down by your side, just in relaxed position. What color do you see here?
Red.
Red, I agree. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a light go back and forth across your eyes multiple times. I want you to follow it with your eyes only without moving your head, okay? Okay.
You've got like two other officers in the background just watching me. I love that.
This one I'm going to hold out to the side. You're probably seeing it. Actually, this one I have to hold out to the side. Okay, the same thing. Keep your eyes only. Okay? Try to keep your feet together for me, okay?
Wait. Because I just feel like you're like really in my.
I have to be like within 12
I'm
to 15
sorry.
inches.
You're good. You're good. I feel. So I feel like I need to adjust.
Sure.
Because
fine.
I just feel like you're like right here, but that's
Yeah,
fine.
I have to be within a certain range. That's why I'm so
No,
close.
you're good. Let's
Are you good?
go ahead.
Okay.
I feel like you're
All right.
close enough.
All right, thank you. So what I'm going to ask you to do now, I'm going to ask you to walk down here with me. There's 2 additional field sobriety tests I'm going to ask you to participate in, okay? So we're going to come down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you in what's called the starting position. I'm then going to explain everything to you and ask you if you have any questions. Don't start until I tell you to begin, okay? So if I can have you put your left foot on the end of the line, then your right foot in front of your left foot, heel to toe.
Uh-oh.
Heel to toe, heel touching the front of your, yes ma'am. Like that, okay? He's about to go 15.
Hey, Halsey, good to see you.
Okay. What I need you to do is stay in that position while I explain the instructions, okay?
What if I decline to this?
Okay,
What
if you decline
I
to
say
this,
that I
sure.
don't want to do this?
Absolutely. Let me explain to you what happens then, okay? If you do not want to participate in the 2 remaining field sobriety tests, you're going to force me to make a determination based on everything I've seen to this point. Okay?
I've
Hold on,
been,
let me finish. Hold on just a second, let me finish, okay? And if you're charged with DUI, that refusal can be held against you in court.
Okay, so I've been very submissive to everything that you guys have asked me. I've done everything.
Okay. Well, there's two additional that I'm asking you to do, so you haven't done everything.
No, I haven't done everything.
Okay.
I've done one thing.
You did. Okay,
But
so I'm asking you to do
at
two
this
more.
point,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm asking at this point, what's going to happen if I decline any
I just
type of
explained that to
testing?
you.
But
You're going to force me to make a determination based on everything I've seen to this point. It's level of impairment.
He was going to take you to jail from the get-go. Just realize that.
Okay. And if you're charged with DUI, that refusal can be held against you in court.
But why is it ever DUI? Because I was turning and we got a collision.
Because you were operating a motor vehicle.
We collided. Okay.
Nobody
ever.
was turning and we got a collision. And she said we collisioned. Yeah, that was pretty funny. That was good. I like that. We collisioned.
If it was an issue with an impairment, why was something not said right there? And why were tests not done right there for my sobriety? But you're doing it hours later.
It's not hours later.
It has been a few hours.
It's been a few hours since the accident?
Yeah, it sure has.
The lady was just taken to the hospital before I got
It's
here.
been a few hours. So why was there not an issue with the first cop that I dealt with when we got in the collision? Why he said anything? This is my home. I was going up to 7-Eleven. I do not agree with these impairment tests because why was it not done when we first...
So could it be the case that she went in and got shit-faced? Like after? Like she got up to 7-Eleven, she got in the crash, she's like, fuck it, I'm gonna start drinking. Like she knows the cops are coming? I don't know. Maybe.
So it came from the first officer that pulled me over, or whatever, that came to the accident. He said, yeah, I feel like she's, under, she's
He said he felt like
whatever.
he saw a few signs of impairment.
Yeah.
That's why he called me out to now do the
So
rest
he
of
called
this.
you out 2 hours later to do impairment
Well, it hasn't been 2 hours.
Yes, it's been quite some time. So I'm wondering why we're doing these tests now, and why they didn't happen immediately if he was so concerned with my condition. I don't agree with this.
Well,
I don't feel
understand.
comfortable.
Sure. Can I talk, or are you going to keep talking over me?
No, because you've been talking the entire time I've been with you.
Yeah, it's called doing an investigation.
Yeah, you've been talking.
I have been.
And your attitude has sucked.
I'm sorry, you think that?
Yeah. Okay, I've done your eye test. I've complied with you everything that we've done. I don't feel comfortable with doing all of this.
So I just want to make sure you don't want to do the additional 2 field sobriety sessions?
No, but...
Okay, let's walk back to the front of my car. Walk with me.
I did...
Nope, walk with me.
I did the first eye
Please
test.
walk with me. If you're not going to do these, please walk with me. That's what I'm asking you to do. I'm not forcing you to do that, am I? No. But you keep talking over me. It's very rude.
I've let you talk the entire time.
Okay, sure, go ahead. I'll let you talk.
I've literally been listening to you and doing what you do. I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't feel comfortable.
Because you don't agree with it.
I don't know because I've literally I don't feel comfortable.
Okay.
So
you don't want to do the last two.
Are you detaining me or
You are
what
detained,
are we doing?
absolutely. You're not arrested, but you are detained. Okay,
So you
now
have
let
to
me
arrest me.
Did I say that?
What's the difference between detained and being arrested? Because I don't know.
Detained means you're not free to leave. Okay. Arrested means I'm putting handcuffs on you. You're going into the back of my car.
I'm scared.
Stop talking over me, please. I'm trying to explain your question, and you're being very rude.
Don't overtalk me. The cop is like a fucking apologist.
Keep talking over me. Okay. Now, do you remember earlier whenever I read you your rights? Do you remember that? It's a yes or no. Do you remember that I read you your rights?
Yeah,
Okay.
I do.
Do you remember your rights?
I do know my rights,
Okay.
and I do know that I can...
The question is, you realize that you've already been Mirandized, right? As soon as you've been fucking Mirandized, more likely than not, they're gonna fucking take you to jail, bro. Like, come on.
Understanding that I read you your rights and you remember your rights, is it okay if I ask you a few questions about some of the things I've seen with you since I started talking with you, and about what happened before the accident? Would that be okay?
What are you asking me?
I'm asking you if I can ask questions about your day before the accident and some of the things I've seen
I don't
out
feel
here.
comfortable with you asking me about questions
Okay,
before.
take a look at my car. Put your hands behind your back. You're being placed under arrest. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands like this. Actually, we're going to take this off your thumb because I'm going to put the handcuffs on, okay?
Alright.
I'm sorry?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Try to stand still for me. You're swaying all over the place.
I'm not doing now, but...
You almost just fell over.
You're gonna hear from my lawyer because...
Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask why I'm being detained? Because I was...
Now you're being placed under arrest. So you're no longer detained. Now you're arrested.
Okay.
Do you have anything in your pockets?
Can I
Needles, knives,
ask
scissors?
why I'm being detained? Because I
You're not
refuse
detained.
to tell you.
No.
No. Ask you why I'm being under arrest because I refuse to tell you what I was
Can you put
doing
that on my
with
head, please?
for the day.
I'm not even going to try to talk to you anymore because you keep talking over me. It's very rude. I would love to answer your question, but you won't allow me to. Okay, do you have anything else on your person? Needles, knives, scissors? Sharp, poke your body?
I don't have nothing.
No? Okay, you're going to walk over to the next section. Did you hear? Okay, don't interfere any further, otherwise you are going to jail. I'm just putting it out there. You already did once.
For what?
You already did once. Obstruction. You already tried to once. Can I explain it to you?
Yes, please.
Okay, you already have tried to once by yelling at her while I was in the middle of my investigation. If you do so one more time, you will go to jail for obstruction. Do you understand?
You guys are molding her
Do
to take her to jail.
you
I don't understand.
understand?
I do.
Fantastic. Thank you.
God damn, this is fucking boring. I'm so fucking bored, dude. Stupid. Stupid!
Nope, it's going in the car.
Oh, come on.
Nope.
Welcome. Got a good show. Got a damn good show. Don't really have a feeling for this one, y'all. Just a bunch of leftists having a damn meltdown. Today? All right, let's get into it. Oh, one last thing. Boom, $5 more, get you a video, yada, yada, yada. Let's get into this. Oh, what the hell are they fighting about?
Yes, this is your Ronald Reagan. How are you?
Super good. I tuned in the other day. This is a true story. And there's this total beefcake on the stream. And I'm like, who's this?
I'm gonna have to fucking respond to this text message at some point. I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy about anything right now. I'm fucking bitter. All right. So just, I'm gonna be like straight up about it, right? Like I'm not content. Like I'm not. Like the situation is fucked, right? Like right now, everything is fucked. Have you looked at the state of affairs in the world?
Kowalski. Yeah. The guy's like a full dreamboat. And I feel like we need to know more about him. Like, is he married? And if so, like, how serious is it, you know?
How serious is his marriage?
Don't
know anything about it. What?
Who the hell is this guy and why should I care?
I don't know anything about Mrs. I haven't heard anything about Mrs. Kowalski. But he did manage to get the highest statewide total of any challenger in the Republican primaries in Nebraska. So if you're in Grand Island, open up a Tinder.
Okay. Well, that's mostly what I wanted to know. I did want to say, I think you're wrong on Jerry Seinfeld. I think Seinfeld is right about comedy. If you think about, like when I was growing up, the golden age of comedy and television was TGIF. Do you remember this?
TGIF?
Older than you.
That would be Home Improvement, Family Matters. I can't remember. I can't remember the other two shows. There was 4.
Is that like the Superstation? Like that was some 90s shit, right? TBS?
Because you had Fox's, Fox was Sunday with The Simpsons and whatever else. And then you had Thursday, which was Seinfeld, Frasier, Friends, and I can't remember the 4th one.
Yep. Yeah, thank goodness thank God, it's Friday. And there were all these shows.
Wait. I didn't get that wrong. That was fucking Turner. I don't even know if they fucking exist anymore, but I do remember that. Oh, shut the fuck up, you cunt. Sorry, not you, whatever this thing is. Okay, they call it American Broadcasting Company. Step by Step? I haven't thought about that in forever. Yeah, it's Turner. Okay, good. I wasn't wrong. Boy Meets World. Okay, so it's part of an ABC program, but I swear... Oh, dinosaurs? Oh, it's been forever. Sister. Right, Family Matters. You mentioned that one. Did that start with ABC, though? Because I swear I thought... Oh, that's it. Clueless. Oh, it started in the 80s. Okay. Oh no, we're fucked. The world's gonna end.
That were just so hilarious. Like, Family Matters, right? So Steve Urkel would, like, make a mistake, and then he would go, "Did I do that?"
Yeah, but Family Matters was a pretty tame show. I mean, I liked Family Matters when I was a kid. I haven't watched an episode in a very long time, and I don't know how well it's aged. I was always more of an Uncle Phil fan.
I think that Jerry Seinfeld was actually talking about the 70s, to be honest with you.
Well, no, but yeah, the 70s.
Yeah, but again, you couldn't do a show like Friends today. Hell, you couldn't do Seinfeld today. First off, Elaine would have to be a woman of color. George would have to be gay. Kramer would have to be a polyqueer, ambidextrous, bisexual, gender fluid furry. And Jerry would just be Jerry.
These were good. It was like a rocket ship up until like the late 80s, mid 90s. Like on what was that? Full House. So Dave Coulier would go cut, and then he'd make a cutting action with his fingers, and then he'd go and he'd point at something, and then he'd go out, and he'd do like his thumb over his shoulder, like cut it out.
Yeah,
just like so good.
I got to be honest with you, that is after my time. I did not see those, so I did not see those shows.
Well, you can just imagine a comedian going cut it out.
Yeah.
Boy, this is real riveting content, Sam. Could you get to the fucking point?
And just how funny that would be, right?
I mean, that's when, before the left, got at sitcoms.
It's like cut it out. That's how it goes.
Yeah, can we get a camera?
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Carl was a cop. Yeah, I couldn't do Family Matters today. That's propaganda. Couldn't do Fresh Prince of Bel-Air because they call Uncle Phil a sellout. You know, you just lay it down for the white man. And you couldn't have Will Smith in that show because Will would be considered a sex offender. Couldn't do the Cosby Show today for obvious reasons. God, Jesus Christ, you can't do... And no wonder TV sucks. You can't make a show anymore.
On Matt, actually, so you can show.
What you talking about, Willis? How's that, too?
What you talking about, Willis? That was a good one. The Olsen twins.
Oh, God, if you did Married with Children, holy shit. Couldn't do Coach. Again, this is why TV sucks now. You can't make a show.
And on Full House would go, how rude.
You couldn't do Dallas. A rich white oil family. That'll fly with the leftists. And this is the other thing. I have no problem with gay characters, but do they have to be in every single fucking goddamn show out there? They're like 8% of the population. Must they be in everything?
And that was, you know.
Actually, some of these would be good for the soundboard. Catchphrase is.
How rude.
Yep. All right. Well, I appreciate you weighing in on this.
Fuck.
Okay. Well, thanks. You can yell again, Sam.
Yep. Did we play the
Just fucking fractured my knuckle. I guess you can't fracture a knuckle, right? It'd be the it hurts. Okay. That's alright. Is that a shit. No. Yeah, okay, that's not helpful. Yeah, something like that. Okay. So we'll just see how this pans out. $160 views and only 9 likes. That's look at the subscriber counts here. So